Chapter 359. Gua Huai quickly retreated, putting some distance between him and Nieli. With an angry roar, his body rapidly expanded, turning into a huge Netherman draconic beast. Although this Netherman draconic beast was a bit shorter than the Saint Bloodwing Dragon, its aura was far stronger than Nya Li's Saint Bloodwing Dragon. All of its bones grew on the outside of its body, forming a hard bone armor. The bones on its body emitted a dark luster as a surge of energy surged out like a flood. It was also an extraordinary level, growth, rate, dragon, bloodline demon spirit. Furthermore, it was a 9-fate demon spirit. Asterisk boom. Asterisk the Netherman draconic beast stomped on the ground, and with a bang, the ground caved in, forming a huge crater. It charged towards the Bloodwing Saint Jiao Dragon with unparalleled momentum. Sensing the Netherman draconic beast's powerful attack, Nieli slightly crouched down and took a defensive stance. Asterisk boom. Asterisk a heavy, muffled sound rang out like a clap of thunder as a majestic aura burst forth. Following the muffled sound of thunder, a large pit appeared on the hard, profound stone battle platform. Rubble flew in all directions, and huge cracks spread in all directions with the two giant beasts as the center, extending for dozens of meters. This caused the students to immediately retreat. The protruding stage was completely flattened. What terrifying strength! The surrounding students of the East District were all shocked. Under the impact of the Netherman draconic beast's attack, the Saint Bloodwing Dragon staggered back, nearly flying out of the stage. The difference in strength between Nieli and the 9-fate Gua Huai was too great. Gua Huai's Netherman draconic beast's strength suppressed Nya Li's Saint Bloodwing Dragon. Sensing that Nya Li's strength was inferior to his, the corner of Gua Huai's mouth slightly curved into a smile. Just as he'd expected, Nya Li wasn't his match at all. Netherman strike. Gua Huai's Netherman draconic beast suddenly swung its palm towards the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's neck. Seeing that the Netherman draconic beast's huge paw was about to hit him, Nya Li let out an angry roar. His entire body glowed with a golden light as spikes grew out of his back at an astonishing speed. His body also suddenly swelled up a little. The surrounding heavenly energy surged wildly, and the mutated Saint Bloodwing Dragon was greatly enhanced. Puff! The Netherman draconic beast slapped one of the spikes on the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's neck. The spike directly pierced through the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's palm, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Howl! The Netherman draconic beast let out a miserable shriek. His voice was practically hoarse. This sudden change stunned everyone. They had never seen a Saint Bloodwing Dragon with spikes on its back. Huang Yu and Nanmen Tianhai abruptly stood up in shock. So it turned out that Nya Li's God-level growth rate, Saint Bloodwing Dragon, it was actually a mutated one. To begin with, a dragon bloodline god-level growth rate demon spirit was extremely rare. Furthermore, due to the fact that a dragon bloodline demon spirit's bloodline was already extremely powerful, the number of mutated ones was even rarer. Its preciousness was unimaginable. Such a demon spirit was actually obtained by Nieli. Even Huang Yu and Nanmen Tianhai couldn't help feeling envious. Very few people could remain unmoved when facing such a demon spirit. Just this mutated Saint Bloodwing Dragon alone was enough for Nieli to become one of Hagami Minyan's most important geniuses. Venerable Flameless clenched his fists so hard that cracking sounds could be heard. He never imagined that Nya Li's God-level growth rate Saint Bloodwing Dragon would actually be a mutated one. Why would Nya Li have such a precious dragon bloodline demon spirit? Venerable Flameless was filled with resentment. If it wasn't for the fact that demon spirits couldn't be transferred after fusing, he would have snatched Nya Li's demon spirit. Why was the one who fused with the god-level growth rate, Saint Bloodwing Dragon Nyeli, and not him? No wonder the old man valued Nyeli so much. Venerable Flameless was extremely unwilling in his heart. The crowd of East District students looked at Nyeli's Saint Bloodwing Dragon, which was glowing with a golden light. Some were envious, some were jealous. My God, that Saint Bloodwing Dragon is something that can't be bought even if you have the money. Such a demon spirit is placed in front of me. I feel that my demon spirit can be directly taken away and destroyed. Many people couldn't help sighing at the unfairness of fate. In Hagami Mumyon, there are simply too few people who could fuse with a dragon bloodline god level growth rate demon spirit. So few that there were only a few. Without a doubt, this group of people were the pride of the heavens. They were the future rulers of Hagami Mumyon, existences that they could only look up to for their entire lives. At this moment, even the 5 auras that had been observing the match couldn't help having a slight fluctuation. A deep voice resounded. It's actually a mutated one. It's been a few hundred years, and none of us have ever seen a mutated dragon bloodline god level growth rate demon spirit. Spread the word from today onwards. Nyeli will be under Hagami Munyon's protection. Hierarch Skycloud, I'll leave Nyeli's teachings to you. All right, Hierarch Skycloud replied. Hierarch Skycloud replied as his gaze fell onto Nyeli. Nyeli had indeed surprised him. Lu Piao, Gu Bei, and the rest were currently rejoicing in other people's misfortune. Guo Huai was in such a miserable state. He'd slapped the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's back. Just thinking about it, one could imagine how painful it was. Lu Piao laughed. I knew that Nyeli wouldn't do something that he wasn't confident in. The Netherman draconic beast retreated a few steps. Guo Huai endured the pain as his heart trembled. He never thought that Nyeli would still be concealing his strength. Nyeli's Saint Bloodwing Dragon had actually completed its first mutation. A mutated god level growth rate, Saint Bloodwing Dragon. No wonder Venerable Flameless was so determined to get rid of Nyeli. His life was saved by Venerable Flameless. Although he knew that the consequences of killing Nyeli would be severe, he still threw a punch towards the Saint Bloodwing Dragon in rage. The Netherman draconic beast's huge fist was about to land on Nyeli's body when Nyeli's body slightly leaned to the side. Poof! The Netherman draconic beast's fist once again landed on one of the back spikes. The Saint Bloodwing Dragon's back spikes were extremely sharp and directly pierced through the Netherman draconic beast's fist. Guo Huai's face contorted from the pain. He raised his other huge palm towards Nyeli's head, only to see Nyeli's head turn. Uft! The Netherman draconic beast's left palm also landed on the back spikes on the back of the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's head. Asterisk O. Asterisk, the Netherman draconic beast painfully roared. The Saint Bloodwing Dragon's back spikes were too many to even touch. The first time the Netherman draconic beast's palm landed on the back spikes, everyone thought that it was just a coincidence. However, the second and third time, they understood that Nyeli was using the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's back spikes to counterattack the Netherman draconic beast. What amazed them was that Nyeli's every defense was so precise, as if he had predicted the Netherman draconic beast's attack in advance. The Netherman draconic beast's 2 palms were heavily injured and dripping with blood. Seeing this miserable scene, everyone could imagine how much pain Guo Huai was in. How pitiful! Roar! The Netherman draconic beast angrily roared and retreated a few steps. The Saint Bloodwing Dragon's back spikes were too sharp, causing him to feel endless fear. Heavenly energy frantically surged around his body, and the violent, devastating power formed a terrifying storm. Huge wind blades formed around the Netherman draconic beast's body. Go to hell! Guo Huai angrily roared. He had already been thoroughly enraged by Nieli. Chapter 360. The Nethermoon Draconic Beast was a draconic bloodline demon beast that lived in wind caves. From birth, it could control the power of the wind. The wind blades it could condense could even shatter artifacts of the same level. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless wind blades slashed towards Nieli's Saint Bloodwing Dragon. The Saint Bloodwing Dragon's entire body flickered with a dazzling golden light as its aura continued to rise. Waves of scorching heat spread out from the Saint Bloodwing Dragon. The Saint Bloodwing Dragon opened its mouth and spat out a scorching Longyan. The Longyan tumbled and collided with the wind blades. Boom! Boom! The Longyan and the wind blades collided in a frenzy. The intense battle continued. Powerful energies wreaked havoc, seemingly wanting to tear the barrier around the stage apart. The scene of the battle left the surrounding students dumbfounded. They weren't surprised by Guo Huai's strength. What shocked them the most was that Nieli could actually fight against the 9 Fate Guo Huai for so long. One must know that Nieli was only a 4 Fate. There was a difference of 5 realms between them. Nieli had really hidden his strength well. Venerable Flameless angrily transmitted his voice to Guo Huai. "How much longer are you going to fight? Hurry up and finish him." Guo Huai was a little depressed. Although Nieli's strength was inferior to his, he was extremely nimble in battle. His wind blades were either dissolved by Nieli or dodged by Nieli. The Saint Bloodwing Dragon's strength had far exceeded Guo Huai's expectations. Roar! The Nethermoon Draconic Beast let out a furious roar as its chest rapidly swelled. Its entire body suddenly doubled in size as boundless heavenly energy rapidly condensed in its mouth, forming a stagnant pressure in the surroundings. The powerful pressure forced the Bloodwing Saint Jiao Dragon to continuously retreat. The Nethermoon Draconic Beast's wind cannon. Nieli's heart trembled. He was also afraid of the Nethermoon Draconic Beast's wind cannon. It was a destructive attack. Nieli wanted to dodge, but it was too late. So fast! The Nethermoon Draconic Beast suddenly spat out a huge ball of wind that shot towards the Saint Bloodwing Dragon. An invisible wind power locked onto Nieli, making it difficult for Nieli to move. The huge ball of wind was about to hit him. The Saint Bloodwing Dragon suddenly struggled and escaped to the side. Boom! The wind cannon grazed the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's body, making a loud noise as a terrifying force swept out. The Saint Bloodwing Dragon was sent flying. Nieli felt a heavy blow on his chest. His forelimbs and some of his wings were directly torn apart by the terrifying force. Blood splattered, and his whole body flew out involuntarily, slamming into the ground. In an instant, a big pit appeared on the ground. This wind cannon had seriously injured Nieli. The difference in strength between the Bloodwing Saint Jiao Dragon and Guo Huai was too great. The Bloodwing Saint Jiao Dragon's body exploded with a dazzling golden light as new flesh regrew at a speed visible to the naked eye. Among the many dragon bloodline monster beasts, the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's body was undoubtedly the most powerful, and it had a strong physical regeneration ability. However, Guo Huai didn't want to give Nieli a chance to catch his breath. His chest and abdomen expanded again, and he spat out a second wind cannon. The third, the fourth, the fifth, one after another, the wind cannons kept bombarding the Saint Bloodwing Dragon. Nieli continuously dodged, but he was still swept up by the terrifying force of the wind cannon's explosions. Bang! 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 The powerful force from the wind cannons continuously bombarded Nieli's body. The Saint Bloodwing Dragon's body was covered with cuts and bruises, and its flesh was a bloody mess. With such serious injuries, even its physical regeneration ability was completely useless. Compared to a 9 Fate expert, it was still too far away. After releasing 9 wind cannons in a row, the Netherman draconic beast was also a little exhausted. It stood still, gasping for breath. Guahuai looked at the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's broken body, and the corner of his mouth curved into a cold smile. So what if Nyali had a mutated god-level growth rate, Saint Bloodwing Dragon? Wasn't Nyali still defeated? Although the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's physical body was strong, it couldn't withstand the power of the Netherman draconic beast's wind cannons. Nyali was heavily injured, and his consciousness was a little fuzzy. He vaguely felt as though he'd returned to the battle with the Sage Emperor. Back then, he'd been surrounded by 6 deity-rank demon beasts and was on the brink of death. However, he still stubbornly fought. But when he was fighting the 6 deity-rank demon beasts, he could only watch as the Holy Emperor annihilated the souls of everyone related to him. This continued until Nya Li's existence lost all meaning, and he died in grief and indignation. After his rebirth, he had another chance. There were many fetters by his side. His parents, friends, clansmen, Yiziun, Ning, and the others' figures flashed through his mind. He had no path of retreat. He couldn't lose. Without the Temporal Demon Spirit book, he wouldn't have a third chance. Nya Li frantically increased his strength and expanded his strength, all for the sake of his battle with the Holy Emperor. How could he die here? How could he lose to a 9 fate? Everyone looked at the stage. The students of the East District couldn't help sighing. Nya Li had finally lost. As a 4 fate, Nya Li had won everyone's respect for being able to fight against a 9 fate. The 5 auras that were observing Nya Li conversed with each other. It's already pretty good that Nya Li was able to do this. The deep voice sounded out once again. I'm getting more and more interested in this kid. The charming voice chuckled. Nya Li had undoubtedly displayed shocking talent. Hierarch Skycloud revealed a knowing smile. Who knows, maybe Nya Li could grow into a new pillar of support for Hagami Minmin and lead Hagami Minmin to glory. Gubei, Lu Piao, and the rest were worried for Nya Li. At the sight of this, Gubei immediately barked, "Let's go and save him!" Just when Gubei, Lu Piao, and the rest were about to make their move, Li Xingyun blocked their path and said, "Wait!" Li Xingyun, get out of the way, Lu Piao said with her brows furrowed. He never thought that Li Xingyun would block him at this moment. Right at this moment, a huge explosion sounded out, and a majestic aura shot into the sky from the stage. Sensing the terrifying energy fluctuations, everyone was slightly startled and directed their gazes at the Saint Bloodwing Dragon. That powerful aura was coming from the Saint Bloodwing Dragon. What was going on? Boom! Boom! With the Bloodwing Saint Jiao Dragon at the center, a series of explosions spread out in all directions. This aura was several times stronger than before. At this moment, aside from the red, blue, yellow, and black fate souls, a 5th fate soul was formed in Nya Li's body. A soul fire formed in his soul realm and quietly burned. 5 fate realm. For ordinary people, it'd be pretty good if they could double their strength from 4 fate to 5 fate. However, Nya Li's strength had increased by at least 5 or 6 times. At this moment, the broken parts of the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's body were rapidly regenerating at a speed visible to the naked eye. Furthermore, its originally golden skin was now covered in a black gold luster, as if it was made of metal. The spikes on its back had also become thicker and sharper. Chapter 361. 5 Fate Realm. Nya Li could sense that the Saint Bloodwing Dragon's physical body had also grown stronger. After reaching 5 fate, the 5 fate souls hovered above his soul realm and continuously revolved around it. The 5 fate souls provided an endless supply of heavenly energy. At this moment, Guohuai was extremely depressed. He'd used so many wind cannons in a row and had practically exhausted all the heavenly energy in his body. However, even after so many wind cannons, he still wasn't able to kill Nya Li. He never imagined that Nya Li would actually break through to 5 fate. The Saint Bloodwing Dragon's shattered body had actually recovered. Gua Huai furiously roared as he pounced towards Nellie and swung his huge palm towards Nya Li's head. He absolutely couldn't allow Nya Li to fully grasp the power of 5 fate. Watch out! Long Yuan and Xiao Yu couldn't help exclaiming at the same time. Just as the Netherman draconic beast's huge palm was about to land on Nya Li's head, Nya Li suddenly opened his eyes and a sharp light flashed through them. Ordinary people would need several hours to fully grasp the power of 5 fate, from 4 fate to 5 fate. However, that wasn't the case for Nya Li. After breaking through to 5 fate, Nya Li quickly circulated the Heavenly God cultivation technique and mobilized his 5 fate souls. Through various methods, he'd already fully grasped the power of 5 fate. How could he be so fast? When Gua Huai saw Nya Li open his eyes, his heart trembled. However, it was already too late for him to react. Nya Li let out a low roar and fiercely flapped his wings. He slightly tilted his body and ruthlessly slammed his back towards the Netherman draconic beast. Bang! With a dull thud, the 2 giant beasts collided with each other. At the sight of this, the surrounding East District students couldn't help feeling their scalps go numb. Nya Li had used his back spikes to ram into the Netherman draconic beast's body. Sure enough, the Netherman draconic beast began to howl. There were hundreds of sharp spikes on Nya Li's back. Each one of them was incomparably sharp and pierced deep bloody holes into the Netherman draconic beast's body. Fresh blood flowed. Gua Huai screamed mournfully. He simply hated Nya Li, the Saint Bloodwing Dragon, to the bone. After colliding with Nya Li, the Netherman draconic beast's body was already full of bloody holes. Moreover, he could feel the pain. Without waiting for Gua Huai to react, Nya Li roared and charged towards the Netherman draconic beast once again. Bang! Bang! On the martial stage, the Netherman draconic beast was constantly being hit by the Saint Bloodwing Dragon. Miserable screams could be heard from all over the place. To the Netherman draconic beast, this was even more terrifying than hell. After reaching 5 fate, Nya Li had grasped 2 new combat skills, the Saint Bloodwing Dragon. However, Nya Li wasn't prepared to use them. Since he could already defeat Gua Huai, he believed that he'd displayed enough talent. The remaining 2 combat skills could be considered his trump cards, and he'd continue to hide them. After experiencing all sorts of things in his previous life, Nya Li understood a certain principle. No matter what kind of situation he encountered, he needed to have a hidden trump card. Those without a trump card would often die quickly. Under Nya Li's frenzied attacks, the Netherman draconic beast was sent flying and heavily fell to the ground. His body flew out and landed heavily on the ground behind him. He lay there, his body a bloody mess, and he could no longer stand up. Venerable Flameless never expected that even Gua Huai would be defeated. He was infuriated as he cursed coldly, "Trash!" Seeing that the Netherman draconic beast couldn't get up, Nya Li's body rapidly shrunk. He recalled the Saint Bloodwing Dragon and jumped off the stage. Looking at Venerable Flameless, Huang Yu and Nanmen Tianhai, Nya Li asked, "Elders, we've already fought twice. Can we end the test now?" It took a long time for the students of the East District to recover from their shock. With the status of a newly promoted student, he'd actually defeated so many experts of the East District and directly entered the top 200. This was something that had never happened in the past several hundred years. Nya Li's talent was simply too shocking, especially the mutated god level growth rate Bloodwing Saint Jiao Dragon, which left a deep impression in everyone's minds. Huang Yu laughed and said, "Nya Li has defeated 2 senior brothers. Today's test will end here." He looked at Venerable Flameless and asked, "I wonder if Venerable Flameless has any objections?" "That's it then," Venerable Flameless said in a deep voice as he swept a glance at Nya Li. Since he'd failed to ambush Nearly this time, he was afraid that it would be even more difficult to find an opportunity the next time. Although he was a little unwilling, he had no other choice. He'd already realized that Hierarch Skycloud had most likely noticed this place. He no longer had any chances, so he could only let it go. After Niali, Lu Piao, Gubei, and the rest also went up to compete. Although Lu Piao and Gubei's performances were also very outstanding, with a gem like Niali in front of them, the students of the East District weren't as shocked. From today onwards, Nia Li and the rest would become students of the East District. However, Nia Li's goal was to quickly enter the Central District and gain power in Hagami Minmin. He didn't have that much time to waste. After the competition ended, the people in the martial arts arena slowly dispersed. The news of Nia Li making it into the top 200 after entering the East District quickly spread throughout the entire Sky Soul institution. Gradually, it also spread to Hagami Minmin. The disciples of Hagami Minmin also started to pay attention to the rising genius, Niali. After his match with Guo Huai, Niali didn't receive any more messages from Hierarch Skycloud. He didn't know what Hierarch Skycloud's thoughts were. If something happened to Hierarch Skycloud, he'd definitely send someone to look for Niali. Since he'd just entered 5 Fate, Niali had to continue cultivating and consolidate his cultivation. As for Li Xingyun, Lu Piao, Gubei, and the rest, they continued to carry out their plans. Recently, whether it was the Demon League or the Tianqing League, geniuses were continuously joining them. Aside from the Demon League's generous treatment, Nia Li's fame had also greatly affected the Demon League. With Nia Li's astonishing talent, who knew what realm he'd reach in the future? Following Nia Li was definitely a promising prospect. The sky gradually darkened. Nia Li continued cultivating as usual. His Fate Soul had already stabilized. Tomorrow he'd be able to entrust his Fate Soul to the Soul Hall and continue his journey to the outside world. Entrusting his Fate Soul to the Soul Hall would be a lot safer. Nia Li quietly sat cross-legged as a powerful aura lingered around him. He'd already finished cultivating the first part of the Heavenly God cultivation technique. Nia Li didn't know when he'd finish cultivating the first part. He quietly pondered over the profoundness of the Heavenly God cultivation technique as waves of comprehension flashed through his mind. Just as Nia Li was about to enter the myriad miles, rivers, and mountains painting, he suddenly felt something strange. He immediately put the painting away and vigilantly looked at the door. A gust of wind blew, and the door opened with a bang. "Who's there?" Nia Li coldly barked as he stared outside. It was dark outside, and there wasn't a single soul in the garden. Nia Li felt an intense sense of danger. The door wouldn't be blown open for no reason. He couldn't see anyone from the outside, nor could he sense any aura. This proved that the other party's strength far surpassed his own. Not knowing where the other party was hiding, Nia Li circulated his heavenly energy and prepared for battle. Could it be an assassin sent by Venerable Flameless? Nia Li's right hand moved, and the Thunder God's meteorite sword appeared in his hand. He was also wearing a grade 6 artifact set. Even so, he didn't feel any sense of security. Just what realm was the other party in? Chapter 362. Nia Li vigilantly stared outside and expanded his perception to the maximum. However, he still couldn't sense the other party's presence. Beads of sweat appeared on Nia Li's forehead. His cultivation had already reached 5 Fate, so his perception had reached an astonishing level. As long as it was within a radius of 50 meters, even a Heavenly Axis realm expert could barely sense the other party's aura. However, the other party was completely hidden from his perception. The other party's strength was at least that of a Tao of Dragon Realm existence. Although he couldn't sense the other party's aura, Nia Li's rich combat experience from his previous life allowed him to sense a strong sense of danger. Assassinating a student within the Sky Soul Institute was something that was absolutely not allowed to happen. It was strictly forbidden by the Hagami Minmin. Even if Venerable Flameless had an illustrious status, he would still be investigated if he did such a thing. He would have to pay with his life. The Hagami Munion's rules weren't something that could be violated by anyone. If it was Venerable Flameless, Nya Li wouldn't be able to understand why he would do such a thing. After all, no matter how secretive Venerable Flameless was, the 5 heads of the Hagami Munion would definitely find out about it. Wasn't he being a little too reckless? Nya Li slowed down his breathing as he coldly scanned the area. As long as the other party made a move, he would immediately retaliate. If the other party was too strong, then he could only use the Heavenly God cultivation technique and fight to the death. He hoped that the commotion and aura fluctuations from the fight would attract the attention of the upper echelons of the Hagami Munion. Nya Li was observing his surroundings, ready to fight at any moment. Suddenly, an invisible energy locked onto Nya Li from the surrounding space. Not good. Nya Li's heart trembled as he brandished the Thunder God's meteorite sword and slashed forward. Streaks of Lei Zhu formed out of thin air and shot towards the invisible energy. However, just as Lei Zhu was about to unleash it, he heard a bang. It shattered and dissipated. How could this be? Nya Li's pupils violently contracted. The other party was so strong. The invisible force continued to lock onto Nya Li. Nya Li furiously roared. He immediately prepared to integrate with the Shadow Devil demon spirit. However, just as Nya Li mobilized the energy within his soul realm, the Shadow Devil demon spirit suddenly appeared. Just when Nya Li was about to integrate with the Shadow Devil, a bizarre energy blasted towards Nya Li's soul realm. His soul realm shook and dispersed, instantly interrupting the demon spirit integration process. Then, an invisible force wrapped around Nya Li's right foot and lifted Nya Li into the air. The opponent's attack speed was simply too fast. Nya Li was greatly alarmed in his heart. He straightened his body and brandished the Thunder God's meteorite sword to slash at the invisible force on his feet. Just as Nya Li was about to make a move, another 2 invisible forces entangled Nya Li's hands. A force slapped Nya Li's pulse. Nya Li felt pain in his wrist, and the Thunder God's meteorite sword flew out of his hand. His hands and feet were completely locked by the invisible force. Under the opponent's hands, he didn't have the slightest strength to resist. Nya Li didn't even know where the opponent was. The opponent's strength was at least at the pinnacle of the Tao of Dragon Realm. Nya Li furrowed his brows for a brief moment. Perhaps he was wrong. The opponent might not be someone under Venerable Flameless. An expert of this level of strength wasn't something that Venerable Flameless could mobilize. Although he knew that the opponent was very strong, Nya Li wouldn't just let himself be bound. If he had a hidden method that could deal with this level of strength, it would be that mysterious vine. Nya Li immediately activated the vine in his soul realm. He felt the boundless energy in his soul realm surging to his hands and feet. The vine in his soul realm rapidly grew, frantically absorbing the surrounding energy. The invisible force that was binding Nya Li's hands and feet entered Nya Li's body and was devoured by the vine. The invisible force that was binding Nya Li's hands and feet immediately collapsed. Nya Li descended from the sky and pounced towards the Thunder God's meteorite sword. He wanted to grab the Thunder God's meteorite sword once again. Seemingly surprised that Nya Li had managed to break free, a voice in the air exclaimed in surprise. Nya Li was just about to grab the Thunder God's meteorite sword. However, at this moment, the Thunder God's meteorite sword seemed to have been slapped by some kind of force. It shot out and stabbed into the ground in the distance, trembling nonstop. Nya Li felt countless invisible forces binding him once again, lifting him into the air. Nya Li immediately activated the vine in his soul realm. However, his soul realm suddenly shone with a golden light. A mysterious inscription pattern array had already locked the vine in Nya Li's soul realm. Even the vine was completely useless. Nya Li was tied up by the invisible force, lying on his back in the air. Nya Li bitterly smiled. The opponent's strength is not something that he can confront. He doesn't even have the chance to integrate with his demon spirit. Even if he were to use the heavenly god cultivation technique, he's probably not the opponent's opponent. Nya Li guessed the opponent's identity. Is there a need to mobilize such a powerful expert just to deal with me? At this moment, a figure appeared out of thin air and landed on the ground. This person was wearing a black, tight-fitting night suit. Even his face was covered under the cloak, making it hard for others to see him clearly. This person's aura seemed to be completely hidden in the void, making it impossible for others to detect him. It's simply like the shadow devil demon spirit that had turned into a void. This person slowly walked towards Nya Li. Although she was wearing a night suit, he could still feel the astonishing, hot figure under the night suit. Her perky buttocks, slender legs, and the astonishing fullness of her chest. All of them were filled with extreme charm. With every step she took, her graceful figure exuded an astonishing charm, and a fragrant scent wafted towards them. Just this hot figure alone is enough to make countless men fall head over heels for her. Although he couldn't see the opponent's face clearly, Nya Li had a feeling that this person is definitely a beauty that could cause the downfall of a country. She slowly walked towards Nya Li, step by step. A hint of killing intent pierced through Nya Li's heart, causing the blood in Nya Li's body to freeze. She slowly walked to the front of Nya Li. Nya Li was lying on his back in front of her like a little lamb that was stripped naked. Her right hand moved, and a sharp dagger appeared in her hand. A cold light flashed. Someone sent me to take your life. However, it's too much of a pity to kill you like this. It's really a waste of your good looks. Therefore, I intend to play with you. If you can make this old lady happy, maybe I can let you die a little easier. Her voice was sharp with a hint of seduction. The dagger in her hand slowly moved towards Nya Li's thigh. With a pu sound, Nya Li's pants were cut open, revealing the skin underneath. On top of it, a shallow bloodstain appeared. Nya Li felt a chill in his crotch. The dagger was only an inch away from the important part. Nya Li's scalp went numb. Senior, please wait a moment. May I know who sent Senior here? Who did I offend? Even if I die, you should at least let me die knowing, right? Nya Li's thoughts quickly turned, thinking about the other party's intention. Chapter 363. Brat, are you afraid now? You've offended so many people, and there are plenty of people who want to kill you. However, I'll let you die knowing that Venerable Flameless sent me. The black-clothed person smiled seductively and continued, whether you want to die an easy or painful death is up to you. The black-clothed person's slender fingers slowly slid across the skin of Nya Li's thigh. That ice-cold aura made Nya Li suck in a breath of cold air. Every now and then, a threatening sensation came from his thigh. How could Nya Li not feel his scalp go numb? Senior, please don't joke with this junior. Nya Li bitterly smiled. Joke? Do you think I'm joking? The black-clothed person patted Nya Li's crotch with the dagger in her right hand and said with a smile that didn't seem like a smile, Senior definitely wasn't sent by Venerable Flameless. It'd be weird if Venerable Flameless could order Senior around. Venerable Flameless is at most a 3-stage Tao of Dragon Realm, but Senior is at least an 8-stage Tao of Dragon Realm. Senior can crush Venerable Flameless with a flick of his finger, so why would he listen to Venerable Flameless' orders? Nya Li said as he looked at the black-clothed person. The black-clothed person was clearly a little shocked. She never imagined that Nya Li would be able to determine the difference in strength between Venerable Flameless and her. After all, Nya Li was only in the Heavenly Fate realm. How could an ordinary Heavenly Fate realm expert know who was stronger or weaker in the Tao of Dragon Realm? Continue. If you can give me another reason, perhaps I can spare you today. The black-clothed person crossed her arms and smiled. Because of the pressure from her arms, her chest had swelled to a shocking angle. Nya Li bitterly smiled. With his ability, how could he easily guess the other party's identity? Such a bewitching woman with such strength would definitely be a top-notch figure in the Hagami Myunmyun. He carefully tried to recall which person was more suitable. From the strength that Senior just displayed, it doesn't feel like you're in the Tao of Dragon Realm, but a martial ancestor. Nya Li's eyes were fixed on the other party. The cloak of the man in black moved slightly. Nya Li's heart stirred. Could it be that he had guessed correctly? If it was a Wu Zong, then it was very likely to be that person. According to the technique you used, it should be from the Dragon Seal family. As for the Dragon Seal family, their experts had reached the martial ancestor realm. I think Senior's identity is already obvious. There's no need to guess. Nya Li thought for a moment and said, "Ha ha ha, you're wrong. I haven't reached the martial ancestor realm yet. It's the 9th layer of the Tao of Dragon." The black-clothed man giggled. She laughed so hard that her breasts were bouncing up and down. "But you can guess that I'm from the Dragon Seal family. You're quite capable. Dragon Seal family? 9 levels of Tao of Dragon?" Nya Li didn't know who the other party was. He helplessly smiled bitterly and said, "I guessed wrong again." The black-clothed man patted Nya Li's crotch with the dagger and said, "You bullied my daughter so badly. It's not too much for her mother to come and get revenge, right?" Nya Li finally understood after hearing the black-clothed man's words. So this black-clothed man was Long Yuan's mother. "Auntie, listen to me," Nya Li hurriedly said, wanting to explain. The black-clothed man waved her hand and said, "I already know the whole story. Since you've guessed so much, I'm not going to kill you." Nya Li finally breathed a sigh of relief after hearing the black-clothed man's words. "You can be spared from death, but you can't escape punishment. I'll only cripple you. You don't have any objections, right?" The black-clothed man patted Nya Li's crotch with the dagger. Feeling a cold light flash under his crotch, Nya Li hurriedly shrank his buttocks and secretly complained in his heart. He didn't entrust his life soul to the soul hall. If he was crippled, it would take a lot of effort to cure him. Moreover, the feeling of being crippled once was always very depressing. "Auntie, you misunderstood. I didn't bully Long Yuan. Moreover, Long Yuan is now my disciple," Nya Li hurriedly explained. "Oh, is that so?" The black-clothed man took off the cloak on her head, and her waterfall-like hair scattered down. Her eyebrows were very similar to Long Yuan's, but she was more mature and charming than Long Yuan. That beautiful face was absolutely devastatingly beautiful. Under the black cloak, her figure was much hotter than Long Yuan's, especially the fullness of her chest. A thought flashed through Nya Li's mind. Would Long Yuan be so spectacular when she grew up? Yes. Nya Li hurriedly nodded, feeling depressed in his heart. Back in the day, he was also someone who had a decisive battle with the Holy Emperor. Although his cultivation had risen very quickly in this life, he was still too far away from the Tao of Dragon Realm. Facing this Tao of Dragon Realm before him, he couldn't fight back at all. "I've heard everything from my daughter. Now I'll give you 2 choices. First, you marry Long Yuan. Second, I'll cripple you right now. Choose one." Long Shuyun patted Nya Li's crotch and said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "Where do you think I should start?" "That won't do. I'm already master and disciple with Long Yuan. Wouldn't that mess up the seniority?" Nya Li hurriedly said, "TCH, that master-disciple relationship of yours is just like children playing house. How can you take it seriously? But so what if it messes up the seniority? Whoever dares to say anything, I, Long Shuyan, will cut off their tongue." Long Shuyan coldly snorted. Nya Li was depressed in his heart. Could this Long Shuyan not be so arrogant? "Auntie, this matter needs to be considered at length. I already have a family. It's not that I dislike Long Yuan, but I feel that I'm not worthy of her," Nya Li hurriedly said. "So what if you have a family? It's normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. I only have one request, and that is that my daughter must be the legal wife. Long Shuyin curled her lips and said, "You're already like that. Although you're indeed not worthy of her, my daughter can only make do with it." Like that? Nya Li simply had an urge to vomit blood. What did I do to Long Yuan? Wait, doesn't Long Yuan already have a fiancé? Oh, why don't we just tear up the engagement? Long Shuyin waved her hand and said, "It's immoral to casually break the engagement." Nya Li said righteously, "Moral, bullshit moral. The fist is the truth. Nya Li, I'll put it here. Are you going to marry Long Yuan or not? If you still make excuses, don't blame me for being impolite." Long Shuyun's eyes flashed a cold light. She coldly snorted and said with a murderous look, "Annie, I'm not making excuses, but there's one thing I don't quite understand." "Speak." Long Shuyun coldly looked at Nya Li. "Your Dragon Seal family has an illustrious background, and Long Yuan is one of the successors of the Dragon Seal family. As for me, I'm just a poor brat from the tiny world without any background. Why does Auntie want to marry Long Yuan to me?" Nya Li said with a bitter smile, "Brat, you don't have to belittle yourself. I have a good eye for people. Although you're from the tiny world, you now have the Saint Bloodwing Dragon and the Hierarch Skycloud as your disciple. Your future is limitless. Therefore, you're worthy of my daughter." Long Shuyin faintly smiled as she looked at Nya Li. Chapter 364. Nya Li was depressed. Regardless of whether she was worthy or not, you have to ask if she is willing first. Don't you know that a forceful melon won't be sweet? Nya Li's thoughts turned quickly. How should I deal with Long Yuan's shrewish mother? Feeling the cold dagger, Nya Li was extremely depressed. He heard that Long Yuan's fiancée, Huyong, had been crippled by Long Yuan twice. Did she learn it from her mother? Long Shuyin looked at Nya Li and said coldly, "Why? Are you still not willing?" A trace of cold aura made Nya Li shiver. "Wait, I want to ask a few things. Why is Long Yuan's surname Long, and your surname is also Long?" Nya Li asked immediately. Hearing Nya Li's words, Long Shuyin was obviously stunned. Nya Li's topic was too sudden. After a moment, she said, "We belong to the Dragon Seal family. Of course, our surname is Long. If you marry my daughter, of course, your surname will also be Long. It's actually marrying into my family. You should be proud to be qualified to be surnamed Long." Long Shuyin said, as a matter of course, "This won't do." Nya Li immediately shook his head and said, "My surname was bestowed by my ancestors, not to mention being crippled. Even if I'm killed, I won't easily change my surname. This is disrespectful to my ancestors." Long Shuyin shrugged and said, "Well, since you don't want to be surnamed Long, I won't force you. As long as your first child with my daughter is surnamed Long, it's fine." Nya Li looked at Long Shuyin in a daze. Long Shuyin compromised so quickly? This is too unprincipled. Before you marry my daughter, if you have any other requests, feel free to state them. As long as they are not too excessive, I can agree to them. Long Shuyin looked at Nya Li and said meaningfully, "I know that you're ambitious, and your plan is pretty good. However, if you want to fight for the position of Patriarch, just the support of Hierarch Skycloud isn't enough. As long as you marry Long Yuan, you can obtain the full support of another big shot. At that time, even Situ Patriarch would have to consider carefully. Your chances of winning are very high. If you don't marry Long Yuan, then our Dragon Seal family will stop you at all costs. Did he want more help or more enemies? Do as you see fit." Hearing Long Shuyin's words, Nya Li felt depressed in his heart. This was simply a naked threat. Who would marry off their daughter like this? He really didn't know how the brains of the Dragon Seal family worked. Nya Li felt depressed. However, he also understood some of Long Shuyin's considerations. Just based on Long Yuan's ability, her chances of winning against Long Tianming for the position of Patriarch of the Dragon Seal family were very small. If Nya Li married Long Yuan, the result would be completely different. Two juniors that had integrated with a dragon bloodline god level growth rate demon spirit, one of which was even a variant one. Presumably, the Dragon Seal family's resources would be tilted towards Nian Li and Long Yuan. Speaking of which, I still have to thank you. Previously, no matter how I tried to persuade my daughter, she wasn't willing to fight for the position of patriarch of the Dragon Seal family. I never thought that after following you, she would actually be willing to fight for it. In this world, there are many things that must be fought for in order to belong to you. I can see that Ina likes you. Since that's the case, as her mother, I naturally have to help her. Nieli, if you dare to let Ina down, don't talk to me about the rules of the Hagami Mian. This old lady has never placed rules in my eyes. Long Shuyin said in a domineering tone. Encountering someone who loved his daughter so much, Niat Li also had a headache. He constantly tried to change the topic. However, Long Shuyin still pressed on. Auntie, how about this? After all, Long Yuan and I are still young. It's not suitable for us to get married now. Why don't we wait for another 5 years? If Long Yuan still likes me at that time, then I'll marry her, Niat Li said after a brief pondering. Who knew what the situation would be like after 5 years? Even if Niat Li went back on his word, Long Shuyin wouldn't be able to do anything to him. What's not suitable about it? There are many people getting married at this age. Of course, waiting for another 5 years is fine as well. You guys just have to settle the marriage first and give birth to your children. Since I'm free right now, I can take care of your grandchildren, Long Shuyin said after a brief pondering. Nia Li was dumbfounded as he looked at Long Shuyin. She's too invincible. Nia Li didn't know how to reply to Long Shuyin. Auntie, shouldn't you ask your parents first before getting married? My parents are both in the tiny world. The entrance to the tiny world will only open in another 5 years. Nia Li immediately said. He couldn't help being impressed by his own wit. Hearing Nia Li's words, Long Shuyin finally hesitated for a brief moment. However, she soon turned her sharp gaze towards Nieli and said, Are you trying to brush me off? How would I dare to brush you off? Nieli immediately replied, My parents are both in the tiny world. You don't have to worry about that. After you guys give birth to your children, you can enter the tiny world 5 years later and let your parents know. Long Shuyin said firmly after a brief pondering. That won't do. Without my parents' permission, I wouldn't dare to do such an unfilial thing. Nia Li immediately said righteously. I finally understand. You don't want to marry my daughter. Since that's the case, then don't blame me for being ruthless. I'll see how long you can be so stubborn. Long Shuyin was enraged as her chest violently heaved up and down. She brandished her dagger and slashed towards Nia Li's crotch. Feeling the chill in his crotch, Nia Li still proudly said, I'll say it again. It's not that I don't want to marry Long Yuan, but before I marry her, I have to ask my parents first. Otherwise, no matter what Auntie does to me, I won't give in. Just as Long Shuyin's dagger was about to slash Nia Li, she suddenly stopped. She was also in a dilemma. After all, Nia Li didn't completely reject her. If she really crippled Nia Li, then Long Yuan might get angry at her. However, this brat was extremely crafty. Who knew if Nia Li was purposely brushing her off? Just as Long Shuyin fell into silence, the door to Nia Li's room suddenly opened, and a person walked in. It was Xiaoyu. When Xiaoyu saw this scene, she was stunned on the spot. You! Xiaoyu stared blankly at the scene. When she passed by Nia Li's room, she heard a woman's voice coming from the room. She angrily thought that it was Long Yuan again, but when she opened the door, she saw the scene. Nia Li was lying on his back in the air. His posture was extremely ambiguous, and the mature and hot woman in front of him was doing something to Nia Li. Who are you? Xiaoyu stared at Long Shuyin and guessed the identity of Long Shuyin. After all, such a strange woman appearing in Nia Li's room was definitely an unusual thing. Long Shuyin patted Nia Li, giggled, and said, Nia Li, how is it? Did I serve you well? She looked at Nieli, and a cold light flashed in her charming eyes. Seeing the look in Long Shuyun's eyes, Nieli smiled bitterly in his heart. This woman was really annoying. He knew that if he didn't cooperate, the consequences would be very serious. Chapter 365. There was no point for Xiao Yu to continue staying here. Long Shuyun was at the 9th stage of the Tao of Dragon Realm, while Xiao Yu was only at the Fate Realm. There was no way Xiao Yu could save him. Thank you, big sister. You've worked hard. Although Nieli felt depressed in his heart, he still replied in such a manner. Xiao Yu's face darkened. She looked at Nieli and cursed. Nieli, you're filthy. It was Long Yuan before, and now it's another woman. How shameless. He slammed the door shut with a bang. Seeing that Xiao Yu had left, Long Shuyun patted Nieli's thigh and said with a smile, not bad. At least you're tactful. Nieli smiled bitterly. He couldn't understand. Was Long Shuyun really Long Yuan's mother? Why were the personalities of this mother and daughter so different? Long Yuan might have a fiery temper, but she was actually more reserved. She was an iceberg in the eyes of others, but Long Yuan's mother was bold and unrestrained. Xiao, you probably thought that there was something going on between him and Long Shuyun. But what did that man mean when he said it was Long Yuan before? Long Shuyun looked at Nieli with a smile that wasn't a smile. Nieli groaned inwardly. He didn't expect Xiao Yu to save him, but why did she still hit him when he was down? What a careless friend. Kid, don't tell me you're trying to deny it after you've eaten it all. My daughter is a little weak. But if you think that we're easy to bully, humph. Long Shuyun snorted. Long Shuyun seemed to think that there was something going on between him and Long Yuan. But there was nothing going on between him and Long Yuan. At most, they were just master and disciple. Everything he did was in accordance with the rules. Li's most beloved woman had always been Yi Ziyun, although he later learned that Xiao Ninger had an inexplicable bond with him since his previous life. Li's heart more or less had a place for Xiao Ninger. However, to Long Yuan, Nieli was only a master and disciple. Moreover, he had only known Long Yuan for a short period of time. How could there be unforgettable feelings? As for Long Shuyun saying that they were easy to bully, what was that all about? Who would dare to bully Long Shuyun? Wasn't that courting death? Auntie, I think this matter should be asked. Isn't it better to ask Long Yuan? Li looked at Long Shuyun with a wry smile. I don't want to disgrace Long Yuan's innocence. Since you want to see my daughter, I also brought my daughter. Long Shuyun looked at Nieli with a faint smile. She waved her right hand, and a figure appeared out of thin air, only to see Long Yuan standing a few meters away from them. At this time, Long Yuan was looking at Nieli with a very complicated look. Nieli was stunned. It turned out that Long Shuyun brought Long Yuan with her. It's just that Long Shuyun used some means to hide Long Yuan so that he couldn't see it. He had to say that this mother and daughter looked very similar. Long Yuan had at least 90% of Long Shuyun's charm, but Long Shuyun was more charming. Long Yuan's expression was even colder. In addition, her figure wasn't as hot as Long Shuyun's. But Long Yuan hasn't grown up yet, so she might not be inferior to Long Shuyun. This was indeed the case in his previous life. In other words, the conversation between Nieli and Long Shuyun was heard by Long Yuan. What was this? Long Shuyun treated him like this. But Long Yuan actually spoke up for her master? Mother, don't force him anymore. There really isn't anything between me and him. That day, he only used golden needles to help me open up my acupuncture points. Long Yuan's eyes flashed a trace of sadness. The reason why she didn't show up was because she wanted to hear what Nieli had to say. But Nieli obviously had the intention to evade. She didn't know why her heart felt a little uncomfortable. In the past, even if those men came up to her, including Hu Yong, Long Yuan wouldn't put them in her eyes at all. She wouldn't have any trace of emotional fluctuations. But this time, hearing Nieli used all kinds of methods to deal with her mother and every possible way to evade, her heart actually had a trace of faint pain. Could it be that in Nia Li's heart she was so unbearable? Even if her mother threatened him, Nia Li still wasn't willing to marry her. But thinking about it made sense. After all, she and Nia Li had only known each other for a few months. From the beginning, she gave Nia Li the impression that she was an overbearing and rude person. It was always Nia Li who was giving, but she didn't give Nia Li anything in return. Nia Li was willing to accept her as a disciple and help her awaken her bloodline, which was already extremely benevolent. What did she have that was worthy of Nia Li's affection? Master Nia Li, my mother was just joking with you. Please don't take it to heart. Long Yuan looked at Nia Li and said apologetically. Only then did Nia Li let out a sigh of relief. It was good that she was joking. He had already been miserably played by Long Shuyan. Looking at Nia Li's relieved expression, Long Shuyan couldn't take it anymore. She looked at Long Yuan. She understood Long Yuan very well. Long Yuan obviously had Nia Li in her heart, but she had retreated. Are we just going to let this brat off like this? That won't do. Since we're already here tonight, how can we just leave empty-handed? This isn't my Long Shuyan style. Long Shuyan snorted coldly and said, since you like this brat, then get pregnant with this brat's child first. If he doesn't admit it, then kill him. This is how I dealt with your father previously. Previously, your father also attracted bees and butterflies everywhere, but he was still subdued by me. However, that fellow was unlucky and died in the hands of the Yaoshan sect. Now that I'm here, I can teach you step by step. Dumbfounded, Nia Li stared at Long Shuyan. He was simply speechless. Is there anyone in this world who teaches their daughter like this? What exactly is this woman's brain made of? Hearing Long Shuyan's words, Long Yuan stomped her feet anxiously and said anxiously, Mother, what are you doing? Our men are cheap wretches. You have to listen to me on this. Long Shuyan said resolutely. That's enough. Long Yuan angrily shouted. That angry voice stunned Long Shuyan. Long Yuan had never spoken so loudly to her before, causing Long Shuyan to fall silent. Between me and him, it's our own business. It's none of your business, Long Yuan said with a frown. She was really a little angry. Long Shuyan didn't care about her inner feelings at all. Long Shuyan looked at Long Yuan. She thought for a moment, then sighed softly and said, If that's the case, then forget it. Long Shuyan felt that she owed Long Yuan very much. Since Long Yuan strongly stopped her, she let it go. Long Shuyan glanced at Nia Li and snorted coldly, I'll let you go today. If I find out that you bullied Long Yuan in the future, don't blame me for being impolite. She waved her right hand, and the rope that bound Nia Li suddenly loosened. Finally free, Nia Li landed on the ground and breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't understand the concept of bullying in Long Shuyan's words, but he finally didn't have to be threatened by Long Shuyan with a dagger. Nia Li finally breathed a sigh of relief. I'm leaving. Long Shuyan turned around and walked outside. Her expression was a little lonely. Wait. Nia Li called out. What else is there? Long Shuyan turned around and looked at Nia Li. Hasn't Nia Li been taught a lesson enough? Chapter 366. Auntie, I have an idea, but I don't know if I should say it. Nia Li said. Although he had just been tormented by Long Shuyan, he didn't have many opportunities to meet Long Shuyan. If he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when he'd get another chance. Speak. Long Shuyan glanced at Nia Li and snorted. She was still a little unhappy about what had just happened. If it weren't for Long Yuan's presence, she would have already flared up. Auntie has a high position in the Dragon Seal family. With your support, Long Yuan's chances of winning the Patriarch's position won't be too far off. Although it's slightly inferior to Long Tianming's, it won't be too far off. Nia Li probed. Then you're wrong. Our Dragon Seal family's ancestor supports Long Tianming. Therefore, it won't be easy for to ascend to the patriarch's position. Long Shuyin swept an indifferent glance at Nieli. Don't think that I don't know what you're planning. The three great families will each support one person to ascend to the position of patriarch. However, it won't be easy for the three people you've chosen to ascend to the patriarch's position. Auntie, you've misjudged me on this point. I'm not trying to get close to the three of them on purpose. I'm trying to support them to pave the way for myself. Nieli shook his head. Oh, then what's your goal? Did we misjudge you? Long Shuyin looked at Nieli with a smile that wasn't a smile. It was clear that she didn't believe Nieli's words. Long Yuan looked at Nieli. She firmly believed that Nieli wasn't using her. After all, there were many coincidences between her and Nieli. Nieli didn't seem to be trying to get close to her on purpose. If Nieli had intentionally wanted to get close to her from the start, he would not have fought so intensely with her in the spiritual eye. I'm sure Annie has noticed that there are many factions within the Hagami Munyan, and the fighting is getting more and more intense. There are many people who want to change, but they are powerless. Hierarch Skycloud, for example, had chosen to retire from the sex affairs. I dare say that if this continues within 200 years, Hagami Munyan will definitely split, Nieli said with certainty. Hearing Nieli's words, Long Shuyin remained silent. Long Yuan's eyes widened. She was obviously shocked by Nieli's words. She had never thought so far ahead before. Continue, Long Shuyin said quietly. Everyone in the world cares about their own interests. Although they knew that there were many problems within the Hagami Munyan, they were still fighting for their own interests. If this continued, the decline of the Hagami Munyan was inevitable. 100 years ago, Hagami Munyan was still ranked third among the 6 great sects. Now it is at the bottom. Even Situ Patriarch wanted to change the current situation, but the 3 great clans had their own thoughts. He was powerless. After all, the power of the 3 great clans is already above the Hagami Munyan to a certain extent. Nieli said, In that case, are you implying that you alone can change it? Long Shuyin asked with a hint of disdain in her voice. Doing it is better than not doing it at all. Although I can't change anything by myself. I couldn't change anything, but I met Gu Bei, Li Xingyun, and Long Yuan. I felt that their talent wasn't bad, and they were trustworthy people. They are much better than Gu Heng, Long Tianming, and Li Yufeng. If Gu Heng, Long Tianming, and Li Yufeng control the 3 great clans, it can be foreseen that the future of the Hagami Munyan will be bleak, and it will inevitably be divided. But if Gu Bei, Li Xingyun, and Long Yuan become the masters of the 3 great clans, I'm afraid the situation will be different. Nieli said passionately, although it is difficult for me to do it by myself. I, Nieli, am willing to do everything I can. I will help Gu Bei, Li Xingyun, and Long Yuan to become the masters, not for myself, but for Hagami Munyan to be our shelter after 100 years. Looking at Nieli's solemn expression, Long Shuyin couldn't tell the truth from the lie. For a moment, she couldn't tell the truth from the lie. In this world, whatever the people did, it was mostly for the sake of the word benefit. Who would do something that would harm themselves to benefit others? Long Shuyin still didn't quite believe it. Hearing Nieli's words, Long Yuan was extremely moved. It turned out that in Nieli's heart, he had such great ambitions. She looked at Nieli. Compared to Nieli, she felt that she was too lowly. She only thought of her own benefits, but Nieli thought of the whole Hagami Munyan. Nieli's image became incomparably lofty in her heart. Long Shuyin curled her lips in disdain and said, These words of yours can deceive little girls. But you want me to believe you? Haha, you can't be thinking that I'm that childish, right? Although Nieli's objective wasn't only for Hagami Munyan, Nieli still had a clear conscience. In the entire Draconic Ruins realm, the greatest threat wasn't the Yaoshan sect, but the supreme existence, the Holy Emperor. Countless ancestors of the Draconic Ruins realm had fearlessly sacrificed themselves to fight against the Holy Emperor. How many of them had died? In order to protect his family and clansmen, Niali had a clear conscience and was extremely magnanimous. Niali looked at Long Shuyun and smiled. It doesn't matter if Auntie believes it or not. As for Ani, there's no harm, right? That's true. What are you going to do next? Long Shuyun went silent for a brief moment. No matter what Niali decided to do, it was enough that one of the people that was pushed to the top was her daughter. As long as it wasn't a threat to her, why would she care about what Niali did? Niali looked at Long Shuyun and sincerely said, "What I'm going to do next might be extremely difficult. I hope that no matter what, Auntie can stand on my side. Helping me is equivalent to helping Long Yuan. That will depend on my mood." Long Shuyun crossed her arms and lightly said, "But if there's anything that you need my help with, you can get to pass it to me. I'll consider it when the time comes." Seeing Long Shuyun's indifferent expression, Niali knew that there was an 80 to 90% chance of success. Long Shuyun had treated Long Yuan very well. As long as he could convince Long Yuan and get Long Yuan to coax and pester Long Shuyun, he wouldn't have to worry that Long Shuyun wouldn't agree. With the help of a 9th stage Tao of Dragon Realm expert, many things would be much easier to handle. Niali, boy, are you really not going to marry my daughter? If you marry my daughter as your mother-in-law, how can I not help you? When ascends to the top, we will also do our best to help you ascend to the position of Hagami Munmyun Patriarch. Otherwise, aren't you afraid of pushing to the top without any benefits for yourself? Long Shuyun looked at Niali and said patiently, "Mother." Long Yuan stamped her feet in embarrassment. Niali immediately said righteously, "There are very few men in this world who wouldn't be tempted by a good girl like Long Yuan. However, I feel that it's an insult to Miss Long Yuan to link marriage with personal benefits. How can I, Niali, be that kind of filthy person? Therefore, it's better to think about this matter at length." Long Shuyun stared blankly at Niali. She couldn't understand Niali at all. Logically speaking, if Niali pushed Long Yuan to the top, if he could marry Long Yuan first, he would definitely be able to obtain even greater benefits. Not to mention, Long Yuan's appearance and family background were also impeccable. However, no matter how she tried to persuade him, Niali just wouldn't agree. Could it be that there were people in this world who didn't care about themselves and only cared about helping others? Chapter 367. Could it be that Niali was really as noble as he claimed to be? Long Shuyun didn't believe it. She had seen too many people deceiving each other. But she had never seen someone like Niali who was willing to help others without asking for anything in return. Could it be that Niali was so sure that Long Yuan would help him? No matter what Annie thinks, I feel that Auntie might as well wait a few years. Annie thinks that my talent is outstanding, but there are many geniuses who have fallen. Aren't you afraid that I won't make any progress if you betroth Long Yuan to me? Of course, Auntie can also break the engagement like she did with Huyong, but if you break it again and again, I'm afraid that your reputation won't be good. Niali was still trying hard to convince Long Shuyun. Long Yuan anxiously looked at Niali. She wanted to explain that her engagement with Huyong was something that her mother had established with Huyong. She was still young at that time and didn't know that she had never treated Huyong as her fiancé. But just as the words were about to leave her mouth, Long Yuan sadly swallowed them back down. Niali probably didn't care about my engagement at all, right? Long Shuyun glanced at Long Yuan and sighed in her heart. She said to Niali, "No matter what your goal is, I admit that you've convinced me. In the future, as long as it's beneficial to my daughter, I'll do my best to help you." Hearing Long Shuyun's words, Niali finally breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Long Shuyun had finally agreed. With the help of a 9th stage Tao of Dragon Realm expert, many things in the future would definitely be much simpler. At this time in the Skycloud Hall, Hierarch Skycloud withdrew his thoughts and quietly sat cross-legged with a solemn expression. After a long moment of silence, he sighed with emotion. "It's funny that I was born in Hagami Munmyun. Because of some troubles, I became disheartened and secluded myself from the world to cultivate. I can't see things as clearly as a youth. Long Yuan, Gu Bei, and Li Xingyin are indeed outstanding among the younger generation. In terms of character, it's not bad. If these three youths can take power, then Hagami Munyin's three great families might really be able to unite. In addition, there have been many rising geniuses recently. Who knows? Hagami Munyin might be able to restore its glory. Hierarch Skycloud actually saw a glimmer of hope. Before Li came to Hagami Munyin's future was bleak. Among the various great families, there were many people who schemed against each other and competed with each other. However, there was no one who took the overall situation into consideration. At that time, Gu Bei was still biding her time, and Long Yuan didn't stand out to compete for the Dragon Seal family's patriarch position. After Li's arrival, he affected Long Yuan, Gu Bei, and Li Xingyun, causing some changes in the situation. The heirs of three great families, three unrelated people, had come together because of Li. Since you have the heart to do such a thing, then I'll lend you a hand. Hierarch Skycloud thought to himself. He, who had secluded himself from the world for so many years, couldn't help but feel a trace of palpitation in his heart. The other four intents also swept past. Hierarch Skycloud faintly smiled. Those who were sincere would definitely be moved by their sincerity. He wondered what the other four thought about it. He wondered if Li's sincerity would be able to move the other four. But of course, Hagami Munyin was still a sect that respected the strong. If Long Yuan, Gu Bei, and Li Xingyun weren't able to support them, then it would be useless. At that moment, in Li's room after sending Long Yuan and Long Shuyan off, Li cast a glance at the sky. A 9-stage Tao of Dragon Realm expert had appeared here. He didn't know if the big shots of Hagami Munyin had sensed it or not. Normally, the big shots of Hagami Munyin wouldn't pay much attention to the Sky Soul Institute. However, such a powerful aura should have attracted their attention. After all, the Sky Soul Institute was the most important place in Hagami Munyin. Practically all the geniuses of the younger generation were gathered there. Of course, this was only a thought and a guess in Li's head. He had to be more careful in the future. Fortunately, Long Shuyan hadn't come with the intention of killing him. Otherwise, the consequences would have been dire. He had to hurry to the Soul Hall and deposit his fate soul. Furthermore, he had to be more careful in the future. Otherwise, wouldn't it be dangerous if Venerable Flameless really sent someone to assassinate him? Li pondered for a brief moment. Since he had enough spiritual stones, he might as well buy a dozen courtyards in the Sky Soul Institute. A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. That way, he wouldn't be so easily assassinated. As the sky gradually brightened, Li quietly left to finish his tasks. Even Xiao Yu and Lu Piao weren't aware of it for the time being. After depositing his fate soul, Li could finally head to the outside world once more. In Li Xingyun's courtyard, Gu Bei, Lu Piao, Xiao Yu, Li, and a few others appeared. When Li saw Xiao Yu, he was about to greet her. However, Xiao Yu's face turned black, and she turned her head away. Li awkwardly rubbed his nose. Even if he had contact with other women outside, Ning hadn't said anything. Wasn't Xiao Yu a little too nosy? Li was a little speechless. With Igui's help, we've managed to kill Gu Heng 3 times. That brat Gu Heng is a Heavenly Star Realm brat, and he'll recover his fate soul in about 5 days. He's probably alive and kicking again by now. However, his cultivation has dropped by a lot. He should only be in the 3rd stage of the Heavenly Star Realm. Furthermore, under our deliberate efforts, that brat Gu Heng has started to suspect Chai Yu. Gu Bei looked at Li and lightly smiled. Since you've recovered your fate soul, let's go collect Gu Heng's deity's lake. Okay. Li nodded, then turned to Gu Bei and smiled. How's the Demon League's development recently? Ever since your competition, we've announced that you're a member of the Demon League. Since then, there's been an endless stream of people joining us. Quite a few of them are Heavenly Star Realm and even Heavenly Axis Realm. Right now, the Demon League has over 6,000 members. Gubei smiled. Although the loyalty of those who have just joined still needs to be tested, our Demon League strength has been rising very quickly. Even Li Xingyun was speechless. In such a short period of time, they'd managed to recruit so many people. The Demon League's expansion was too fast. Not to mention the number, but in terms of strength, it was already on par with the Tianqing League. Among all the forces controlled by the younger generation, the Demon League could definitely be ranked in the top 10. Aside from that, Li Xingyun also heard that Long Yuan had established the Profound Note League. It was said that when it was first established, hundreds of Heavenly Axis realm experts joined. There were even a few Dao of Dragon Realm elders and Grand Elders that expressed their support for the Profound Note League. The Profound Note League's strength had surpassed the Tianqing League at an astonishing speed, and was now ranked 5th among the forces. Although the Profound Note League wasn't as strong as the forces controlled by Long Tianming, Liu Feng, Situ Beiyan, and Guheng, the Profound Note League's rise had exceeded everyone's expectations. What excited Li Xingyun the most was that the Profound Note League had already formed an alliance with the Tianqing League and the Demon League. The heirs of the three great families had actually joined forces. This was absolutely unprecedented. According to this trend, it was hard to imagine how far the Profound Note League would develop in the future. Chapter 368. The one that Li Xingyun admired the most was Nieli. In the past, Li Xingyun rarely admired someone. Although Nieli was much younger than him, he'd accomplished something that even he couldn't imagine. The Demon League and Tianqing League quietly set off for the outside world. Recently, the Tianqing League, Demon League, and Gu Heng's forces had fought several times. The battles had already reached the climax. Both sides were in a killing frenzy. Gu Heng didn't care about his losses as he besieged the Tianqing League and Demon League. The Tianqing League and Demon League launched a fierce counterattack against Gu Heng's forces. Gu Heng's losses were much greater than the Tianqing League and Demon League. However, Gu Heng's forces suddenly had over 200 Heavenly Axis realm reinforcements. Therefore, Gu Bei and Li Xingyun's forces immediately avoided the brunt of the attack. What puzzled Gu Bei and Li Xingyun was that they didn't know where those Heavenly Axis realm experts came from. Therefore, they immediately became more cautious and couldn't confront Gu Heng's forces head-on for the time being. The outside world. Heiyun Deity's Lake. This was the most important deity's lake under Gu Heng's control. There were over 600 people guarding this place, with 16 of them being Heavenly Axis realm experts. The defensive strength of this deity's lake was pretty good. However, Gu Heng's main forces weren't here, so he only needed to send a portion of them to guard the deity's lake. These people sat on the grass near the deity's lake to cultivate. The heavenly energy here was extremely dense, so it was much faster to cultivate than in other places. Therefore, these people weren't willing to waste time, and only a few were responsible for patrolling. They'd always followed Gu Heng and acted without fear. They'd never thought that anyone would dare to attack their deity's lake. At this moment, a few kilometers away from the deity's lake, the Tianqing League and Demon League's forces quickly gathered. Is everyone here? Gu Bei looked back and asked. I've done a head count. More than 3,000 people are here. 56 Heavenly Axis realm cultivators. Lu Piao said. This time, they had only brought over 3,000 people with them. However, it was more than enough to conquer the Heiyun deity's lake. It's about time. Li Xingyun looked at Nieli and said with a smile. N. Nieli nodded. All right, let's go. Gu Bei waved her hand and shouted. He appeared high-spirited. Once upon a time, in order to conceal his strength and bide his time, he had willingly degenerated, making the elders of his family feel that he was a useless person. However, the passion in his heart never stopped burning. From that day onwards, he could finally stand up and fight against Gu Heng. His sister's illness was cured by Nieli. The dragon bloodline god, level growth, rate demon spirit, was also given to him by Nyeli. Even if Nyeli wanted him to die, he wouldn't say a single word. Kill! More than 3,000 people charged towards the Heiyun deity's lake. From afar, the dense crowd looked like a swarm of bees in the sky. Nyeli also followed. He wore a grade 6 artifact set and held the Thunder God's meteorite sword in his hand. The black and white wings on his back flapped as he flew towards the Heiyun deity's lake. Although Xiaoyu was at odds with Nyeli, she still followed beside him. However, he still followed beside Nyeli as they flew. The people in the Heiyun deity's lake were still cultivating and hadn't noticed anything. A few sentries were chatting when one of them pointed into the distance and said, "Look, why are there so many people over there? Maybe some force has mobilized their men?" Another person looked into the distance. Such a scene was too normal. They didn't think that anyone would dare to attack the Heiyun deity's lake. If the Heiyun deity's lake was attacked, Gu Heng would definitely rush over within a few hours. So what if they managed to attack the Heiyun deity's lake? Wouldn't they still be beaten back? While they were chatting, a large group of people came whistling over from afar. It's the Demon League. There's also the Tianqing League. By the time they realized that something was wrong, Nyeli, Gu Bei, and the rest had already led their men to the deity's lake. Nyeli swung the Thunder God's meteorite sword down. Thick bolts of lightning fell and blasted several Heavenly Fate realm experts away. Several Heavenly Axis realm experts charged towards Nyeli, but were quickly intercepted by the Heavenly Axis realm experts from the Demon League and Tianqing League. An intense battle broke out around the deity's lake. At this moment, it was a completely unequal battle. Even a Heavenly Axis realm expert on Gu Heng's side had to face 5 to 7 people. Very quickly, they were killed, one after the other. Under the escort of everyone, Nyeli arrived at the deity's lake. He stood in the middle of the deity's lake and started laying down inscription patterns. Rays of light circulated as the inscription patterns were imprinted on the deity's lake, quickly forming a complete inscription pattern array. A deity root slowly rose from the center of the inscription pattern array. Nyeli's right hand moved, grabbed the deity root, and threw it into the myriad miles, rivers, and mountains painting. He looked into the distance and saw that the battle had already calmed down. The guards of the Heiyun deity's lake had basically been wiped out. Gu Bei looked at Nyeli and asked, "Are we done?" "Yeah." Nyeli lightly smiled and nodded. "All right, let's go to the next deity's lake," Gu Bei said excitedly. Although she didn't know where Nyeli had placed the deity root, Gu Bei knew that in Nyeli's hands, the deity root would definitely be extremely valuable. Nyeli would be able to get countless spiritual stones out of it. Very quickly, over 3,000 people left and rushed to the next location. Like a swarm of locusts, the Heiyun deity's lake began to collapse. Half an hour later, Gu Heng arrived at the Heiyun deity's lake with over 10,000 people. However, where was the Heiyun deity's lake? At the sight of this, Gu Heng simply wanted to vomit blood. The Heiyun deity's lake had been under his control for several years and had provided him with a large amount of spiritual stones every year. But now the Heiyun deity's lake was gone? He couldn't understand why the Heiyun deity's lake would suddenly disappear. Even a martial ancestor realm expert would find it hard to destroy a deity's lake. Furthermore, what good would it do? Nyeli, Gu Bei, I'm not done with you. Gu Heng roared furiously. Higui's eyes flickered as he said in a meaningful tone, "Boss Gu Heng, I think there's something fishy about this. Since they destroyed the Heiyun deity's lake, they must be heading to the next deity's lake. We have to chase after them. The Guyu deity's lake is the closest to this place. They must be heading there." Chai Yu was infuriated when he heard Higui's words. Recently, he had been the subject of suspicion. He had almost fought with Higui. Higui, this despicable person, always bad-mouthing him in front of Gu Heng. It seemed like Chai Yu was no longer trusted. Previously, Chai Yu and Gu Heng had been ambushed out of nowhere. Gu Heng had died, while Chai Yu was lucky enough to escape. From then on, Chai Yu was no longer trusted. Later on, Gu Heng had been killed twice, but Chai Yu had not been there either time. Chai Yu felt that Higuei was up to no good and hurriedly said, "Boss Gu Heng, they might be heading to the Lightning Deity's lake. If we rush to the Guyu Deity's lake and miss them, the Lightning Deity's lake will be lost." Gu Heng glanced at Chai Yu indifferently. After pondering for a moment, he said in a deep voice, "Come, let's go to the Guyu Deity's lake." Gu Heng flew away. Higuei glanced at Chai Yu and sneered before following Gu Heng. Chai Yu's heart sank as he watched Gu Heng and Higuei's backs. It seemed like Gu Heng no longer trusted him. Chapter 369 Guyu Deity's Lake. When Gu Heng and the others arrived, it was already empty. There was no trace of Guyu Deity's lake. Gone again? Gu Heng was about to go mad with anger. Gu Bei was going to kill them all. Not only did she destroy the Heiyun Deity's lake, she even destroyed Guyu Deity's lake. They must have left not long ago. Gu Heng was about to go crazy. He shouted hysterically, "Search the surrounding area. Everyone else, follow me to the Lightning Deity's lake. I want to kill them all." Even if he killed Gu Bei and the others, it wouldn't be enough. If Gu Bei and the others died, they could still be resurrected in the Soul Hall. However, if the deity's lake was gone, there would be nothing left. "Gu Bei, I'm not done with you." Gu Heng gritted his teeth. Thinking about the deity's lake, he felt like he was being stabbed in the heart. Gu Heng's subordinates began to search for traces of Nie Li and the others, especially in the direction of the Lightning Deity's lake. On the way to the Lightning Deity's lake, the members of the Demon League and Tianqing League were flying. Gu Heng's men have caught up. What are we going to do? Li Xingyun looked at Nie Li and asked. By the time they reached the Lightning Deity's lake and took it, Gu Heng's men would probably arrive. It would be a fierce battle then. Don't worry. Let's continue to the Lightning Deity's lake. That's Gu Heng's last deity's lake. Even if we all die, it'll be worth it. Nie Li said. After taking all 3 deities' lakes, they could take drastic measures against Gu Heng. What was there to be afraid of? Let's take his last deity's lake. Let's see how he'll survive in the great world. A trace of hatred flashed in Gu Bei's eyes. When she thought of Gulan, who was once paralyzed and sat in a wheelchair, Gu Bei felt a strong surge of hatred. Since Gu Heng had tried to harm his sister, he should have known that this day would come sooner or later. Everyone increased their speed and flew toward the Lightning Deity's lake. Lightning Deity's lake. When Nie Li and the others arrived, they discovered that something was amiss. There were 3,000 people guarding the Lightning Deity's lake. While Gu Heng was rushing to the Guyu Deity's lake, he had also sent a group of people to strengthen the protection of the Lightning Deity's lake. There are too many people at the Lightning Deity's lake, Li Xingyun said with a frown. Escort me inside, Nie Li said after some thought. Although the other party had many people, Li Xingyun and the rest should be able to escort him to the center of the deity's lake. All he had to do was collect the deity's root of the Lightning Deity's lake. Li Xingyun barked. Everyone from the Tianqing League, listen up. Escort brother, Nie Li inside. Everyone from the Demon League, listen up. Escort boss, Nie Li inside. Gu Bei also yelled. At this moment, the guards of the Lightning Deity's lake had already formed a powerful defense and were eyeing the Tianqing League and Demon League. Kill! Battle cries shook the heavens. Li Xingyun, Gu Bei, Lu Piao, and the rest led a group of Heavenly Access Realm experts as they charged ahead. They were all wearing Grade 6 artifacts, so even if they encountered a Heavenly Access Realm expert, they wouldn't be afraid. Very quickly, the two parties engaged in a chaotic battle. Nie Li and Xiao Yu followed, closely behind as they charged towards the center of the deity's lake. Bang! 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 Xiao Yu helped Nie Li kill a few Heavenly Fate realm experts that were charging towards them. Thanks. Nye Li lightly smiled toward Xiao Yu. Humph. Xiao Yu's face turned black. She turned her head away. Why is Xiao Yu's heart like a woman's? She's still holding a grudge, even at a time like this. Nye Li was speechless as he brandished the Thunder God's meteorite sword and shot out bolts of lightning. Roar! The people in front started to merge with their demon spirits. Huge beasts appeared out of nowhere and started to fight in the sky. Blood rained down like a huge meat grinder. Both sides had people dying one after another, under the escort of the Heavenly Axis realm experts. Nye Li and his group quickly approached the lightning deity's lake. Don't let them in. Boss Gu Heng and the rest will be here soon, shouted a golden-armored guard from the lightning deity's lake as he led a large group of men towards Nye Li's group. Just as they were about to reach them, the Heavenly Axis realm experts beside Li Xingyun, Gu Bei, and the rest all integrated with their demon spirits. Roar! 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 Huge beasts appeared out of nowhere. All of them were extraordinary level growth rates, dragon, bloodline demon spirits. Their huge bodies were filled with malevolence. Their extremely powerful auras suppressed their opponents to the point of suffocation. At the sight of this, the guards of the lightning deity's lake were all dumbfounded. Dragon bloodline god level growth rate demon spirits were extremely rare. Only a few people in the entire Hagami Munyan possessed them. Dragon bloodline god level growth rate demon spirits were extremely rare. However, they were also extremely rare among the younger generations of the Hagami Munyan. It was already pretty good if there were only a few hundred dragon bloodline god level growth rate demon spirits. Furthermore, the majority of them possessed dragon bloodline god level growth rate demon spirits. They were all extremely important members of the younger generation. However, there were actually over 20 dragon bloodline extraordinary growth rate demon spirits in front of them. To others, dragon bloodline god level growth rate extraordinary level growth rate demon spirits were extremely rare. They were practically impossible to purchase in the market. However, to Nye Li, obtaining over 20 dragon bloodline god level growth rate extraordinary level growth rate demon spirits wasn't difficult at all. He had a large number of deity roots. Nye Li had already accumulated an astonishing amount of spiritual stones. He'd used a lot of spiritual stones to get Gu Bei to purchase a large number of dragon bloodline god level growth rate demon spirits and integrate them with dragon bloodline god level growth rate demon spirits. Nye Li had given Gu Bei and Li Xingyun 50 to 60 dragon bloodline god level growth rate extraordinary level growth rate demon spirits. Gu Bei and Li Xingyun had chosen a few loyal subordinates from the Demon League and Tianqing League to integrate with Dragon Bloodline God level growth rate extraordinary level growth rate demon spirits. After integrating with the Dragon Bloodline God level growth rate extraordinary level growth rate demon spirits, these Heavenly Axis realm experts became even more loyal. They deeply felt that joining the Demon League was definitely the right choice for them. How could they receive such treatment if they joined another force? As for the other experts that didn't receive Dragon Bloodline God level growth rate extraordinary level growth rate demon spirits, Gu Bei and Li Xingyun would continue to observe them. It didn't matter if it was for their own benefit or some other reason. The members of the Demon League and Tianqing League were fighting with their lives on the line. When they fought against Gu Heng's subordinates, every single one of them was like a pack of wolves and tigers as they charged forward without a care for their lives. Over 20 Heavenly Axis realm experts with Dragon Bloodline God level growth rate extraordinary level growth rate demon spirits pounced forward like wolves and tigers. The guards of the lightning deity's lake were instantly terrified. What a joke! Heavenly Axis realm experts were already strong enough. now that they'd integrated with Dragon Bloodline God, level growth, rate, extraordinary level, growth, rate demon spirits. How are they supposed to fight them? Even if they died in battle, they'd only receive a few dozen spiritual stones as compensation. Why would they risk their lives? They'd heard that the members of the Demon League and Tianqing League would receive 5 to 6 times more compensation than them. Furthermore, they'd receive additional rewards for killing them. This was truly infuriating. The guards of the lightning deities' lake retreated one after another, under the escort of the Heavenly Axis realm experts. Nya Li finally arrived at the center of the lightning deities' lake. He started drawing inscription patterns with his demon blood and bombarded the lightning deities' lake. Chapter 370. While Nya Li was bombarding the lightning deities' lake with inscription patterns, Gu Heng had already arrived with his men. Seeing Nya Li's group gathered in the center of the lightning deities' lake, Gu Heng was instantly enraged. He didn't know what method Nya Li had used to destroy the Heiyun and Guyu deities' lakes, but now that he saw Nya Li standing in the center of the lightning deities' lake, he knew that Nya Li was definitely preparing to destroy the lightning deities' lake. With the Heiyun and Guyu deities' lakes gone, they only had the lightning deities' lake left. But now, Nya Li wasn't even going to leave the last deity's lake for them. Gu Heng was going crazy. Kill them all. Gu Heng roared as he pointed his longsword at Nya Li's group. Soon, tens of thousands of people charged towards the lightning deity's lake. Nya Li, we'll do our best to hold them off. You have to hurry. Gu Heng's men are already here. Li Xingyun anxiously barked as she formed a tight, defensive array with her men. Boom! 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 An intense battle broke out. There were simply too many people on Gu Heng's side. They were 3 to 4 times more than the Tianqing League and the Demon League. They began to frantically attack the Tianqing League and the Demon League. Under Gu Heng's lead, over 300 Heavenly Axis realm experts charged towards the Lightning Deity's Lake. Beside the Lightning Deity's Lake, the Tianqing League and the Demon League's experts were locked in a bitter battle. Gu Heng led over 300 Heavenly Axis realm experts. They were simply invincible as they slaughtered their way towards the Lightning Deity's Lake. Nya Li, we can't hold them off any longer. Gu Bei anxiously yelled. There were simply too many Heavenly Axis realm experts. Boom! A lightning arrow struck Nya Li, causing electricity to shoot out in all directions. Thankfully, Nya Li was wearing a grade 6 prized artifact set. Thus, a protective power was able to deflect the lightning arrow. If it weren't for that, Nya Li would have been killed by the lightning arrow. Seeing the lightning arrow hit Nya Li without any effect, Gu Heng felt extremely depressed. Yet another damned grade 6 prized artifact. Stop them! Gu Bei said anxiously. A group of people rushed to block Gu Heng and the others. At this moment, Nya Li was concentrating on blasting inscription patterns into the deity's pool. Very quickly, the inscription pattern array started to be perfected. They formed a revolving path of light. Success! Nya Li smiled faintly. He could vaguely see a god root gradually appearing, and he reached out to grab it. Just at this moment, a Long Yen suddenly blasted onto the inscription pattern array. With a loud bang, the inscription pattern array was shattered. What's going on? Nya Li furrowed his brows for a brief moment. He realized that a few hundred meters away, one of Gu Heng's subordinates, a Heavenly Axis realm expert that had integrated with a dragon bloodline demon spirit, was fighting with an expert from the Tianqing League. He was the one that released the Long Yen. Nya Li didn't know if that person was doing it on purpose. The Long Yen struck the inscription pattern array, causing it to shatter. The god root that had just appeared with great difficulty hid back inside. Nya Li quickly continued to write inscription patterns, preparing to repair the inscription pattern array. Nya Li, we can't hold on much longer. Lu Piao and the rest anxiously yelled. It wouldn't be long before the 3,000 members of the Tianqing League and Demon League would be completely annihilated. All of you go to hell. Gu Heng had a sinister expression on his face as he fiercely pounced towards Nieli. Just as his sword was about to slash down, Li Xingyun stepped out from the side. Boom! Gu Heng's sword slashed onto Li Xingyun's body. A protective barrier formed around Li Xingyun's body, reflecting Gu Heng's attack. Gu Heng was simply depressed. He had no idea where Nieli, Li Xingyun, and the rest got so many grade 6 artifact sets. Although he was stronger than Li Xingyun, he couldn't even break through Li Xingyun's grade 6 artifact set with his own strength. Grade 6 artifact sets and a large amount of dragon bloodline extraordinary growth rate demon spirits. The more he fought with the Tianqing League and the Demon League, the more frustrated he became. What annoyed Gu Heng wasn't that the Tianqing League and the Demon League were too strong, but that the Tianqing League and the Demon League were too rich. If he was given that much money, he would be able to create a powerful force. Furthermore, there was one more thing that annoyed him. He had no idea how much money the Tianqing League and the Demon League had. In such a short period of time, the Demon League already had over 6,000 people. Furthermore, many Heavenly Access Realm experts had also joined the Demon League. If the Demon League continued to grow, then what? However, with the protection of the sects, although they could slightly restrict the development of the Demon League, what could they do? They couldn't stop the momentum of the Demon League that was like a hot knife through butter. Kill him! Gu Heng furiously barked. 6 Heavenly Access Realm experts charged towards Li Xingyun. Protect Boss Xingyun. The surrounding experts all gathered around Li Xingyun. At this moment, the Tianqing League and the Demon League had already lost over 1,000 people. However, the casualties of Gu Heng's forces weren't light either. Over 2,000 people had died. The people of the Tianqing League and the Demon League weren't afraid of death. They stubbornly blocked Gu Heng's men. Although they were outnumbered, their morale was unstoppable. Their fighting intent soared to the sky. Before they died, they dragged a few people down with them. The forces under Gu Heng were all depressed. How could they not be depressed when they encountered a group of wolves and tigers that would self-destruct at the slightest provocation? As for the Tianqing League and the Demon League, even if they died in battle, the spiritual stones they'd receive would guarantee that they wouldn't suffer a loss. If they could kill 1 or 2 more people, they'd still make a profit. So how could they not fight with their lives on the line? Just as the Heavenly Path and Demon Leagues were about to be wiped out, a dark mass of people appeared in the distance. They were like a black cloud that was charging towards them. The reinforcements from the Tianqing League and the Demon League are here. The reinforcements numbered 8,000 to 9,000, and they charged towards the Lightning Deity's lake. Boss Xingyun, Boss Gubei, we're here to support you. War cries shook the heavens. Almost all of the Tianqing League and the Demon League's forces were mobilized. Although the number of experts they had was still a lot lower than Gu Heng's forces, they weren't inferior in terms of numbers. Seeing this scene, Gu Heng's face darkened. Since when did the Tianqing League and the Demon League have so many people? He hadn't even realized it yet. Not long ago, when the Demon League had just been established, Gu Heng didn't care about the Demon League at all. But now, the Demon League was a threat to them. With the addition of the Tianqing League, they could definitely be evenly matched with the dozens of forces he'd roped in. Just thinking about it made Gu Heng want to vomit blood. If he'd known earlier, he would have poisoned Gubei and turned Gubei into trash, just like his sister. Just when Gu Heng's 200 Heavenly Access Realm experts surrounded Li Xingyun and the rest, over 100 Heavenly Access Realm experts suddenly appeared and pounced towards Gu Heng's group. Just where did these 100 Heavenly Access Realm experts come from? Since when did the Tianqing League and the Demon League have so many Heavenly Access Realm experts? It wasn't easy for Gu Heng to borrow over 200 Heavenly Access Realm experts. Who would have thought that the Tianqing League and the Demon League would suddenly have so many reinforcements? The baby would probably be born in a few days. He'd be staying in the hospital from morning to afternoon. In terms of updates, Snail would try his best to maintain the current updates. If he couldn't, he'd ask for a leave of absence. Chapter 371. What Gu Heng didn't know was that aside from the Tianqing League and the Demon League, Long Yuan had also sent over 100 Heavenly Axis realm experts to help. Long Yuan's Profound Note League hadn't announced their alliance with the Tianqing League and the Demon League. However, in reality, the Profound Note League had been secretly supporting the Tianqing League and the Demon League. That included sending over 100 Heavenly Axis realm experts to help the Tianqing League and the Demon League. These 100 Heavenly Axis realm experts had all changed their appearances, so Gu Heng's men couldn't recognize them as Profound Note League's men. Since Gu Heng had found reinforcements, it wasn't surprising that the Tianqing League and the Demon League had found reinforcements as well. Just as the two sides were in a stalemate, another 5,000 to 6,000 people flew over and joined the fray. These people were obviously helping Gu Heng. It's Li Yufeng's men. Li Xingyun frowned his brows. He never thought that Li Yufeng would also join the fray. However, Li Yufeng had always been in conflict with him, so it wasn't surprising that Li Yufeng would join the fray. Although Li Yufeng's Fengyi League was inferior to the Tianqing League in terms of experts, it was still a considerable force with many members. Li Yufeng himself didn't come. This was also Li Yufeng's style of doing things. He was a person who was stingy with his cultivation, so he didn't participate in the fray at all. This was also the reason why there weren't many experts following him. The Tianqing League and the Demon League were already in a disadvantageous position, so the pressure suddenly increased. However, Li Xingyun, Gu Bei, and the rest had a very simple goal. They didn't want Gu Heng's men to get close to Nieli. Their defense was very solid, and Gu Heng's men couldn't get close at all. Nieli had already completed the inscription pattern array. Rays of light circulated, emitting a dazzling radiance. Under the pull of the inscription pattern array, a deity, Root, slowly appeared. "Stop him!" Seeing this scene, Gu Heng shouted anxiously. He didn't know what Nieli was doing. If Nieli completed it, it would be troublesome. Streaks of Longyan shot towards Nieli. Just as the countless Longyan beams were about to hit Nieli, the 10 Heavenly Axis realm experts from the Tianqing League and Demon League, who had integrated with a dragon bloodline demon spirit, stood in front of them. Bang! Bang! Countless Longyan exploded, and raging flames scattered in all directions. Although Longyan had caused some damage to those Heavenly Axis realm experts, he had still managed to injure them, but it was not enough to kill them directly. Whoosh! 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 3 Longyan streaks passed through the gaps between the Heavenly Axis realm experts at a crafty angle and shot towards the inscription pattern array below. A sinister expression flashed across Gu Heng's face. If he didn't dismember Nieli into 1,000 pieces, he wouldn't be able to vent the hatred in his heart. No matter what, he wouldn't let the lightning deity's lake be destroyed so easily. The 3 Longyan beams whistled over and were about to hit the inscription pattern array below. Facing the incoming Longyan beams, Nieli didn't move an inch. Nieli stood there motionlessly, his expression calm. He quickly extended his hand and grabbed the deity, Root, in his hand. Boom! Boom! 3 Longyan beams bombarded Nieli's surroundings. One of them even exploded on Nieli's body, sending raging flames flying. The Grade 6 artifact, Set's barrier, quickly opened up and blocked the flames. Not a single spark landed on Nieli's skin. The deity Root was still in his hands. The corner of Nieli's mouth rose into a faint smile as he threw the deity Root into the myriad miles rivers and mountains painting. Since the deity Root was in his hands, there was no longer a need to continue fighting. Brother Xingyun, Gu Bei, retreat. Conserve our strength. Nieli transmitted his voice to Li Xingyun and Gu Bei. Hearing Nieli's words, Li Xingyun, Gu Bei, and the others rejoiced. Nieli had succeeded. What was the point of fighting? Let Gu Heng cry on his own. In any case, they weren't going to play with Gu Heng anymore. Everyone retreat! Gu Bei shouted, "Charge out with me!" Li Xingyin took the lead and charged out. The Tianqing League and Demon League's experts all charged out. Without the deity root, the lightning deity's lake began to crumble. Seeing this scene, how could Gu Heng not understand what had happened? His heart ached so much that he was on the verge of tears. This lightning deity's lake was his last remaining deity's lake. So what if he killed Nia Li's group? All three of his deities' lakes were gone. Not a single one was left. Nia Li, that goddamn bastard. If he wanted to fight for a new deity's lake, he would have to fight with the other forces. Moreover, he definitely couldn't find anything better than the Heiyun, Guyu, and Lightning deities' lakes. I'm going to kill all of you. Gu Heng roared furiously as he led his subordinates to attack Li Xingyun, Gu Bei, and the others. Nia Li, Xiao Yu, Lu Piao, and the others followed Li Xingyun and Gu Bei, but the battle was too intense. Very soon, everyone was pushed away. Kill that brat. We must take his interspatial ring. Gu Heng pointed in Nia Li's direction as he cursed. Nia Li must have taken something from the lightning deity's lake and hidden it in his interspatial ring. He had to take it back. A group of people surrounded Nia Li. When Li Xingyun, Gu Bei, and the rest saw this, they immediately wanted to rush over to help Nia Li. Don't worry about me. You guys retreat first. Nia Li hastily yelled. His deity root wasn't in his interspatial ring, but the myriad miles, rivers, and mountains painting. At most, he'd just die here. Even if he died, the deity root wouldn't be taken back by Gu Heng. At most, he'd have to stay in the Sky Soul Institute for a period of time. A group of Heavenly Axis realm experts surrounded Nia Li. Bang! 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 Streams of energy bombarded the barrier around Nia Li, causing the barrier to show signs of shattering. Once the Grade 6 artifact's barrier shattered, Nia Li would undoubtedly die. With his strength, it was impossible for him to fight against a Heavenly Axis realm expert. I have to put the Grade 6 artifact set into the myriad miles, rivers, and mountains painting before the barrier breaks, and I'm killed. Nia Li thought to himself, this Grade 6 artifact set definitely couldn't fall into the hands of Gu Heng. A group of Heavenly Axis realm experts pounced towards Nia Li. Just when Nia Li was about to put away the Grade 6 artifact set, Xiao Yu, who was standing beside Nia Li, suddenly extended her hand and grabbed onto Nia Li. Follow me! Xiao Yu urgently said. Her left hand quickly activated the inscription pattern array on the ring on her index finger. Streaks of light quickly enveloped Nia Li and Xiao Yu. A strange space-time fluctuation quickly spread out. Nia Li was also shocked in his heart. He never thought that the ordinary-looking ring on Xiao Yu's finger would actually be a space-time artifact. Seeing the scene and feeling the strange space-time fluctuation, Gu Heng was shocked and barked, "Quick, stop them!" Streaks of Longyan shot towards Nia Li and Xiao Yu. One of the Longyan hit Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu let out a groan. However, she still managed to activate the artifact on her finger in time. With a flash of light, the two of them disappeared. They actually let Nia Li and Xiao Yu escape. At the sight of this, Gu Heng's eyes turned bloodshot. An ominous glint flashed in his eyes. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. 3 deities' lakes were destroyed, but the culprit actually escaped? Chapter 372. Seeing that Nia Li and Xiao Yu had disappeared, Gu Bei, Li Xingyun, and the rest were overjoyed. Since Nia Li had already escaped, what was there for them to worry about? Everyone retreat! Li Xingyun shouted. The Demon League and Tianqing League split into dozens of forces and charged out, fighting as they retreated. Gu Heng led his men and chased for a few hundred miles. Although both sides suffered casualties, more than half of the Tianqing League and Demon League's forces retreated safely. Gu Heng could only watch as the Tianqing League and Demon League's forces left. After a quick calculation, the Tianqing League and Demon League's forces suffered over 5,000 casualties, while his side suffered over 6,000 casualties. On Li Yufeng's side, there were also over 1,000 casualties. 3 deities' lakes were gone, and the death toll was even higher than that of the Tianqing League and Demon League. Gu Heng was extremely depressed. As Gu Heng watched the Tianqing League and Demon League's forces disappear into the distant horizon, his eyes flashed with anger. If it was a simple revenge, the elders might not care. However, you guys even dared to destroy someone's deity's lakes. I don't believe that the elders will sit idly by. Gu Bei, I want to see if you can still hold your position as the first-in-line successor. Gu Heng led a group of people in the direction of the Hagami Munmun. He must instigate the elders to impeach Gu Bei. Destroying 3 of his deity's lakes was simply too vicious. He must make Gu Bei pay the price. One day later, in the Sky Soul Institute in Gu Bei's courtyard, Gu Bei, Li Xingyun, Lu Piao, and the rest gathered together once again. Why isn't Nieli back yet? Gu Bei frowned and asked with some doubt. The inscription pattern array that Xiaoyu released at the end seems to be some kind of mysterious space-time array. Anyway, they have already set up their life souls. At worst, they will be killed once. There's no need to worry about them. Li Xingyun said with a smile. The outside world was so vast and boundless. It was not a good idea for them to send people to search for it. Gu Bei nodded and said, "All right, then forget it for now." Lu Piao wasn't worried about Nieli. They were talking about the arrangements of the Tianqing League and the Demon League, as well as the compensation for the members who would die later. A servant hurried in. This person was called Gu Ting, one of Gu Bei's direct subordinates. "Belle, I just received news. Gu Heng and the rest are contacting the elders of the Gu clan to impeach you." Gu Ting said anxiously, "Impeach me?" Gu Bei was stunned for a moment. It seems to be because the Tianqing League and the Demon League destroyed 3 of their deities' lakes. Gu Ting reported. Gu Bei frowned. Something like destroying the deities' lakes had never happened before. It was indeed a little too much. However, what if Gu Heng poisoned his sister? That was the cruelest and most vicious thing to do. This was an eye for an eye. How is Gu Heng going to impeach me? Gu Bei asked with a frown. Since Gu Heng wanted to do something, he had to be on guard. Li Xingyun and Lu Piao were also listening by the side. They couldn't help much when it involved the internal affairs of the Gu clan. They could only follow behind and give suggestions. Gu Heng has gathered more than 10 elders of the Gu clan and is going to put pressure on the patriarch. He wants you to give up your position as the first successor or compensate for the loss of 3 deities' lakes. One of the elders was a supporter of Miss Gulan and had secretly told her about this news. Miss Gu asked me to pass the message to you. Gu Ting said. A cold light flashed across Gu Bei's eyes. Before he displayed his strength, Gu Heng had always been the first successor of the Gu clan. Many elders were on good terms with Gu Heng. This time, they had destroyed 3 of Gu Heng's deities' lakes. Gu Heng was definitely not satisfied, so he wanted to use the power of the Gu clan to deal with Gu Bei. Gu Bei, what are you going to do? Lu Piao looked at Gu Bei and asked. Gu Bei was silent for a moment. After thinking for a while, she said, I have an idea. Gu Ting, go and investigate which elders Gu Heng has contacted. Yes, Gu Ting bowed. Gu Bei started to get busy. In a deep and secluded valley in the macro world. This place was surrounded by steep cliffs, and in the middle was a valley with lush flowers and grass. Spring water flowed, and the forest was dense. The heavenly energy here was also much denser than other places. It was unknown how far this place was from Hagami Munmun. Nya Li had never been to this place in his previous life. After Xiao Yu activated the space-time array in her ring, she brought Nieli to this valley, avoiding the pursuit of Gu Heng's group. However, Xiao Yu was also heavily injured. He was almost killed by Long Yan's attack. Xiao Yu was only at the heavenly fate realm. After being attacked by Long Yan, his body was covered in black burns. With his current cultivation, it would be hard for him to recover. Nye Li couldn't help but feel guilty that he should have bought a 6th-grade artifact set for Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu struggled to sit up against a tree. He struggled to raise his head to look at Nye Li and weakly said, "My injuries are already hard to heal. You might as well just kill me. That way, I can revive in the Soul Palace. Although your injuries are serious, it's not hopeless." Nye Li squatted beside Xiaoyu and checked his injuries. He smiled confidently and said, "As long as your soul realm isn't completely shattered, it won't be a problem for me." Xiaoyu revealed an awkward expression on his face as he said, "Forget it! Since you can be saved, why do you want to give up on healing?" Nye Li didn't understand. He looked at the ring on Xiaoyu's finger and said, "I didn't expect you to be hiding something. This seems to be a space-time ancient treasure. Even I didn't recognize it before. This treasure seems to be connected to your bloodline and has fused with you." Xiaoyu looked down at the ring on her finger and said with a distant gaze, "I'm an orphan. I was adopted by my foster father. At that time, I was just a baby and didn't know anything. Anything related to my past is gone. All that's left is this ring. To me, this ring has a very important meaning. It's the only proof of my existence in this world." Hearing Xiaoyu's words, Nye Li smiled and shook his head. A person's existence isn't something that can be proven by an item. I don't know if you've heard of this phrase. Empty like this life, quiet like a flower, illusory and faintly discernible. But the heart is like a clear mirror. When a person comes to this world, they are originally empty. Your existence doesn't need anyone to prove it. You just need to enjoy the process of life with a happy heart. Where you come from is actually not that important. Xiaoyu stared blankly at Nye Li. Although Nye Li was younger than him, he was like a wise man who had already seen through the falsehood. Hearing Nye Li's words of consolation, his lonely heart seemed to have obtained a trace of comfort. Xiaoyu looked at the ring on his finger and solemnly said, "Although I understand what you're trying to say, and I will do the same as you and savor the process of life, I still want to know its origin." Chapter 373. "Okay, I'll help you heal your wounds." Nye Li looked at Xiaoyu and said, "No need." Xiaoyu paused for a moment, looking a little bashful and embarrassed. Nye Li creased his brows. "If you don't heal, your wounds won't be able to be healed. When that time comes, it will greatly affect your own cultivation. Healing is too troublesome. I'll just go back to Soul Palace and directly revive," Xiaoyu said resolutely. He seemed a bit restless. "Although your wounds look very serious and cover your entire body, healing isn't troublesome at all. At most, it'll take 1 or 2 hours." Nye Li creased his brows and said, "Compared to losing a stage of cultivation, this is clearly much simpler and more appropriate." Xiaoyu's expression was anxious as he shook his head. "Forget it, there's no need." His entire body was covered in burns. If he wanted to recover, wouldn't that be, "Are you worried about my medical skills?" "Don't worry, I guarantee that in less than 2 hours you'll return to your original handsome appearance. When that time comes, Huang Ying and the others will still scream when they see you." Nye Li laughed and said, "I didn't mean it like that." Xiaoyu hastily wanted to explain that he had a reason that was hard to say. "Then what's there to hesitate about? We're all men. There's no need to be so distant." Nye Li extended his hand and grabbed Xiaoyu's shoulder to check on Xiaoyu's wounds. He prepared to heal Xiaoyu. "Speaking of which, you were injured because of me, so I have a duty to heal you. Don't worry about my medical skills. I guarantee that your cultivation will be even higher than before. No, I really don't need it." Xiaoyu raised his hand with difficulty, wanting to stop Nye Li. Nye Li was confused. What was wrong with Xiaoyu? He could clearly be healed, but he insisted on dying once and then reviving in Soul Palace? Could it be that after being sprayed by Longyan his brain was spoiled? In order to save him, Xiaoyu was seriously injured. Nye Li already felt guilty enough, but Xiaoyu still wanted to die. Wouldn't that make him feel even more guilty? No matter what, I will definitely cure you. Niali stretched out his hand and sealed Xiao Yu's acupuncture points, making Xiao Yu unable to move. I really can't. Xiao Yu said anxiously. Don't say any more. I understand. Niali tapped on Xiao Yu's neck, causing Xiao Yu to be unable to speak. Xiao Yu could only stare at Niali with her black and spirited eyes. Niali had sealed her acupuncture points. She couldn't move at all and couldn't even speak. Whoa! Xiao Yu struggled with all her might. She twisted her body, but it was completely useless. Her clear eyes were filled with anxiety. Don't worry, leave it to me. Niali patted Xiao Yu's shoulder as he lowered his head to look at Niali's skin. The corner of his mouth rose into a slight smile. It was merely a burn from the dragon flames and didn't harm his soul realm. It could still be treated. The one who used Longyan's attack was at least a Heavenly Star Realm expert. Logically speaking, Xiao Yu should have been killed in one hit. However, because Xiao Yu used the space-time array on her ring to block a portion of Longyan's attack, Xiao Yu was only seriously injured. With Xiao Yu's Heavenly Fate Realm cultivation, it was impossible for her to recover from being injured by a Heavenly Star Realm Longyan's attack. Logically speaking, a Heavenly Fate Realm cultivation shouldn't be able to treat Xiao Yu's injuries. However, Niali was different from others. With Niali's methods, it was more than enough to treat Xiao Yu's injuries. Whoa! Xiao Yu's face turned red when she saw Niali examining her body. She desperately wanted to say something. However, she couldn't say anything. Niali patted Xiao Yu's shoulder and said, "This injury is nothing. It'll heal very quickly. I'll help you take off your clothes first." Rip! Niali slowly tore apart Xiao Yu's clothes. Very soon, Xiao Yu's shoulders were completely exposed. Niali took out a bottle of ointment from his spatial ring, dipped it in some medicinal paste, and slowly applied it on Xiao Yu's shoulders. While applying the ointment, Niali also injected his heavenly energy into Xiao Yu's shoulder. The skin on Xiao Yu's shoulders slowly recovered its rosy and fair complexion. The degree of delicacy was not inferior to Xiao Yu's when she wasn't injured. It was so delicate that even women would be jealous of it. How is it? Do you believe in my ability now? Niali said with satisfaction. His heavenly energy seeped into Xiao Yu's body and completely healed the internal injuries on Xiao Yu's body. Whoa! Xiao Yu kept struggling. Her eyes were filled with anxiety. I understand. Niali patted Xiao Yu's shoulder and said with a confident smile. He applied the ointment and slowly healed the injuries on Xiao Yu's face, neck, and shoulders. It was exactly the same as before. It had to be said that Xiao Yu was indeed beautiful. It was no wonder that Huang Ying and the others had a soft spot for Xiao Yu. Even Niali couldn't help but feel a little jealous. The top is healed. Next is the bottom. Niali lifted Xiao Yu up and then put him down on the ground. With a rip, he tore off all the clothes on Xiao Yu's back. Xiao Yu's chest seemed to be injured. There were a lot of bandages wrapped around it. Niali directly tore off all the bandages, revealing Xiao Yu's entire back. Xiao Yu's back was covered with hideous burns. Whoa! Xiao Yu kept twisting his body. His face was red to the neck. His eyes were filled with shock, but he couldn't speak at all. Niali smeared the medicinal paste on Xiao Yu's back and then slowly applied it. The burn wounds on Xiao Yu's back quickly disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. A brief moment later, his entire back became incomparably smooth. His skin glowed with a jade-like luster, and his two exquisite shoulder blades looked like they were carved out of white jade. Niali was dumbfounded by this sight. His skin could simply be described as ice and jade. Niali couldn't help but sigh. If Xiao Yu was a woman, he would definitely charm a lot of men. Niali quickly expelled the unrealistic thoughts in his head and focused on treating Xiao Yu's burns. Soon, the wounds on his back were all healed. Chi! Niali also tore off Xiao Yu's pants, revealing his slender thighs. He began to treat it. He slowly smeared the ointment on every burn on his thighs and then carefully massaged them. Traces of heavenly energy were injected into Xiao Yu's body. After a while, the burns on his thighs were all healed. That tight and slender thighs could be said to be perfect. There was no flaw at all. Li didn't know how to describe it. It looked like Xiao Yu had been living like a prince since he was young. He'd been raised too well. Xiao Yu's throat emitted a strange sound. Li's hands almost massaged the back of his thighs. A trace of strange heat passed through Li's palms into his body. Although he couldn't move, that clear feeling was constantly transmitted. Thank you everyone for your blessings. He saw some arguments about why the snail called his daughter a golden daughter. In fact, the various titles in modern times weren't so exquisite. The reason why he called his daughter a golden daughter was because his daughter lacked gold in the 5 elements. He felt that the title of golden daughter was quite good. Chapter 374. Xiao Yu struggled for a long time, but to no avail. She could only open her eyes wide and helplessly accept her fate. After treating her back, Li flipped Xiao Yu over and made Xiao Yu sit beside a big tree. Li was dumbfounded by the scene in front of him. Xiao Yu is very slender. Her chest is flat and clean. Although there are a few burns on the front, it's not serious. You can see a lot of snow-white skin. However, the skin on her chest is intact. The white skin is densely covered with a mysterious tattoo. This tattoo is extremely complicated, like some kind of extremely profound inscription pattern. Even Li doesn't understand it at all. This inscription pattern is probably related to Xiao Yu's background, a strange ring with the power of time and space, as well as the strange inscription pattern. It's all very profound. Li guessed that Xiao Yu probably has an extraordinary background. Being stared at by Li, Xiao Yu's face turned red all the way to her neck. She could only slightly turn her head away. Li shrugged and said, "I say, we're all men. What's there to be ashamed of?" Hearing Li's words, Xiao Yu looked a little ashamed and angry. Li started to treat Xiao Yu's front. He applied medicinal paste on Xiao Yu's wounds and slowly massaged them, carefully treating every wound. Li looked abnormally serious as he lowered his head to treat her wounds. Xiao Yu looked a little absent-minded. Her eyes flickered, not knowing what she was thinking. "I say, can you not look at me like that? It's giving me goosebumps." Li said gloomily, "Xiao, you wouldn't have that kind of weird fetish and like men, right?" However, Li still healed all the wounds on Xiao Yu's body, leaving only a few private places for Xiao Yu to heal herself. Li was about to release Xiao Yu's acupuncture points when his gaze once again fell on the mysterious inscription pattern array on Xiao Yu's chest. Vaguely, Li seemed to feel a mysterious energy, fluctuation, spreading from the inscription pattern array on Xiao Yu's chest. It was as if the surrounding time had stopped. His gaze fell on it. It was as if he was attracted by a magnet, and it was difficult for him to move away. Li's heart is filled with doubt. Just what is the inscription pattern on Xiao Yu's body? Li subconsciously reached out his hand slowly. He touched the inscription pattern on Xiao Yu's chest. It was as if his body was no longer under his control, attracted by a deep power. Woo, woo, woo. Xiao Yu's body violently twisted for a moment. However, Li acted as if he didn't hear it at all. His right hand has already covered the mysterious inscription pattern. Bang! A mysterious power surged out, only to see the inscription pattern array on Xiao Yu's chest quickly revolving. Mysterious inscription pattern chains quickly extended in all directions, and then locked onto Li's body. A deep whirlpool pulled Li's consciousness into it. Li completely lost consciousness. After a long time, Li's consciousness entered a dark and vast space. Just like that, he quietly sat cross-legged, surrounded by a boundless emptiness. A kind of fear of nothingness assaulted him from all directions. Where is this? Nia Li frowned in doubt. Why did he touch the inscription pattern array on Xiao Yu's chest? Why did it become like this? Nia Li felt that the surrounding space was filled with a powerful will. Compared to this powerful will, his own was like a drop in the ocean. This is the space inside the void spirit array. A deep and hoarse voice came from the end of the endless space. Void spirit array? Nia Li frowned for a moment. Very quickly, he recalled some information about the void spirit array. This was an inscription pattern array that only people who had cultivated the Heaven's Divination technique to an extremely powerful level could set up. Heaven's Divination technique. It was a mysterious, forbidden technique. In the space-time controlled by the Holy Emperor, the Heaven's Divination technique absolutely could not be learned. If someone learned the Heaven's Divination technique and was found out, they would be chased to death by the Holy Emperor's divine generals. However, although it was forbidden to learn, there were still countless people with lofty ideals who passed down the secret technique. There were still many people who cultivated the Heaven's Divination technique. It was said that the Heaven's Divination technique, they could inherit the heavenly Tao and break through the space-time seals set up by the Holy Emperor. However, once the cultivation of those who cultivated the Heaven's Divination technique reached a certain level, they would be detected by the Holy Emperor and die without a doubt. Therefore, there were only a few people in history who could cultivate the Heaven's Divination technique to the level of being able to set up a void spirit array. The strength of these people had already reached an unimaginable level. To a certain extent, they could even fight against the Holy Emperor. That's right, this void spirit array was set up on my daughter when I was alive. That was already something that happened millions of years ago. I fought against the Holy Emperor and eventually fell. In order to protect my only daughter, I used a secret space-time technique to teleport my daughter to the present millions of years in the future. It was because I caught a trace of an intense space-time aura in the space-time. There was an existence who had cultivated the Heaven's Divination technique to the same realm as me. Your daughter? Nia Li furrowed his brows. Could this person be referring to Xiao Yu? Although he had always suspected that Xiao Yu was a woman, Nia Li had never been able to confirm it. Thinking of Xiao Yu's flat chest, Nia Li bitterly smiled. Just now, Nia Li thought that he had already confirmed that Xiao Yu was a man. The voice didn't seem to care about what Nia Li was thinking as it continued. Although I don't know where that expert is, I can sense an intense space-time aura from your body. His body contained an intense space-time aura? Could it be the 2 remnant pages of the temporal demon spirit book? Or something else? Senior, may I ask why you placed the void spirit array on your daughter's chest? Nia Li asked as he looked into the void. My wife and I have sealed our entire lifetime's worth of cultivation into our daughter's bloodline through this void spirit array. As time passes, our daughter's bloodline will slowly awaken and she will become an expert that surpasses us. However, with her current strength, she still won't be able to fight against the Holy Emperor. We can only wait for that expert who has cultivated the Heaven's Divination technique to the pinnacle. The voice resounded. I wonder if there's anything I can help you with? Nia Li asked after a brief pondering. The void spirit array sucking his consciousness in was probably the intention of this expert. This expert must have a reason for doing so. Although I don't know where you came from, I can feel that my daughter's relationship with you isn't ordinary, the voice said. Cough, cough. Nia Li couldn't help feeling a little awkward. Previously, he didn't know that Xiao Yu was a woman. Now that he knows that Xiao Yu is a woman, Nia Li couldn't help feeling a little awkward. Xiao Yu's entire body seemed to have been touched by him. We are indeed very good friends. Nia Li awkwardly smiled. Since you're her good friend, I would like to entrust you with something, the voice said. Senior, please speak. As long as I can do it, I will do my best to do it. Nia Li straightforwardly replied. After all, his relationship with Xiao Yu was pretty good. Previously, He was saved by Xiaoyu and even touched Xiaoyu. If he didn't agree to her father's request, it would be a little too much. Chapter 375. I can sense the aura of the myriad miles, rivers, and mountains painting from you. I didn't think that you'd actually obtain this ancient artifact. Furthermore, you've completely fused with it. The voice sighed with emotion. Nie Li was inwardly startled. He didn't think that Xiaoyu's father would be able to sense the myriad miles, rivers, and mountains painting hidden in Nie Li's soul realm. Once the power in my daughter's bloodline is released, she'll possess the cultivation we had when we were alive. The aura of the heavens divination technique will be exposed, and the Holy Emperor will be able to sense it. Therefore, I would like to ask you to send my daughter into the myriad miles, rivers, and mountains, painting before the power in her bloodline awakens. That way, she'll be able to escape this calamity, said the voice. Isn't it just sending her into the myriad miles, rivers, and mountains painting? No problem. Nie Li patted his chest and said, May I ask when the power in Xiaoyu's bloodline will awaken? The voice hesitated for a moment before it finally said, either when her cultivation has reached the martial ancestor realm, or when she's a married woman. Hearing this, Nie Li was clearly stunned for a moment before a strange expression flashed across his face. Thinking about it, reaching the martial ancestor realm shouldn't be difficult. The myriad miles, rivers, and mountains painting is indeed an astonishing treasure. It can form a small world within it. Back then, the myriad miles, rivers, and mountains painting caused a series of battles. One time, 2 pinnacle experts risked their lives to hide the painting in order to prevent it from falling into the hands of the Holy Emperor. In the end, both of them died in the hands of the Holy Emperor. The voice sighed. This was the space-time domain of the Holy Emperor. Any existence that could threaten the Holy Emperor, be it a person or a treasure, would be eliminated by the Holy Emperor the moment the Holy Emperor learned of it. The myriad miles, rivers, and mountains painting was also one of the treasures that the Holy Emperor wanted to eliminate. However, the myriad miles, rivers, and mountains painting was still preserved by some people with lofty ideals. Back then, in order to fight against the Holy Emperor, countless experts fell. Until today, there is only one method left that can keep the Holy Emperor in check. That was the ancestral Godland, which had been created by countless powerful beings, had suppressed one of the Holy Emperor's demonic bones, causing the Holy Emperor to temporarily be unable to use all of his power. The Holy Emperor could only use his doppelganger to control this space-time. This doppelganger's strength is only 1/10 of his main body's, so it gave us some opportunities. Otherwise, the dozens of nearby domains would have been barren. They were all refined by the Holy Emperor, the voice said with a sigh. Nie Li's heart shuddered when he heard that voice. It turned out that the Holy Emperor's devil bone had been suppressed by the ancestral Godland. In the decisive battle in his previous life, Nie Li felt that the Holy Emperor was unexpectedly weak. It looked like the Holy Emperor had yet to recover his peak strength. According to what Nie Li knew, the reason why the Sage Emperor had become so fearless in his previous life was because the Holy Maiden of the ancestral Godland had suddenly disappeared. The ancestral Godland had also been destroyed by a golden flame. Perhaps it was because the Holy Emperor hadn't had the time to recover his strength after the ancestral Godland was destroyed. In this life, how was he going to resolve this situation? Nie Li remained silent for a long time. Although the Holy Emperor is very powerful, you don't have to be too pessimistic. There are many powerful beings hiding in the corners of the various domains. They're diligently cultivating, ready to confront the Holy Emperor at any time. The tiny world in the Draconic Ruins realm was a seal placed by a powerful being before his death. Even the Holy Emperor couldn't break it. That powerful being hid many treasures in the tiny world. If you can obtain those treasures, they might be of great help to you. The seal of the tiny world is extremely powerful. Only people from the tiny world can enter and exit it. My daughter happens to be from the tiny world, so she might be able to help you. the voice said. Hearing the words of Xiao Yu's father, Nieli finally understood the ins and outs of the tiny world seal. So this was the origin of the tiny world. What Xiao Yu's father didn't know was that Nieli also came from the tiny world. He didn't know that the tiny world was hiding some treasures. Just what kind of treasures were hidden there? The Temporal Demon Spirit Book, DemonGods Meteorite Sword, and Nightmare Demon Pot should be one of them. Although Nieli had also found treasures like the Green Poison Pearl, those treasures paled in comparison to the Temporal Demon Spirit Book, DemonGods Meteorite Sword, and Nightmare Demon Pot. Nieli never thought that the tiny world would be so important. Only the natives of the tiny world could freely enter and exit it. No wonder the Yaoshin sect wanted to nurture a force in the tiny world and let the Demon Beast clan control the entire tiny world. After understanding all of this, the fog in Nieli's heart gradually dispersed. So that's how it is. When the next entrance to the tiny world opens, he must enter it as soon as possible. Only then would he be able to obtain the treasures of the tiny world before the experts of the Yaoshin sect. Although when Nieli had been reborn, he felt that he already knew a lot of things. However, there were still many mysteries that he couldn't solve. For example, the mysterious Kong Ming the Great. Nieli had no idea who he was or where he was right now. "I'll leave my daughter in your hands. Senior, rest assured. As long as I'm here, no one will touch a single hair on your daughter. Of course, I can't guarantee anything if I'm dead." Nieli shrugged. Hearing Nieli's words, the voice lightly laughed and said, "If you can hide, then hide. If you can't, then that's fate. Since that's the case, you can go back first." The voice gradually faded into the distance, disappearing without a trace. Nieli's consciousness slowly withdrew and returned to his own body. He pinched his right hand, and a strange feeling was transmitted into his palm. The softness and fullness were so plump that he couldn't even grasp them with one hand. "What is this?" A crisp sound rang out. Nieli instantly felt a burning pain on his face. He opened his eyes and saw that Xiao Yu had already put on her clothes and was glaring at Nieli. "Pervert!" Xiao Yu couldn't help spitting out. Her face was still burning hot. Nieli's consciousness had entered Xiao Yu's body for roughly 2 hours. The acupuncture points on Xiao Yu's body had already been automatically unsealed. However, what was that feeling just now? Nieli looked at Xiao Yu's chest. It was clearly flat. Could it be his misconception? Could it be that he had fallen asleep? Nieli shrugged and said, "I didn't know you were a woman. Who asked you to pretend to be a man all the time?" "You." Xiao Yu was depressed. She thought of what happened just now. Her whole body was touched by Nieli. However, this wasn't Nieli's fault. Who asked her to pretend to be a man all the time? Thinking of how she was put on the ground by Nieli and massaged naked, Xiao Yu's cheeks were burning. "Forget it. Today's matter. You can just pretend that nothing happened." Xiao Yu shook her hand and said with a little resentment, although she knew that she suffered a loss, what could she do to Nieli? Chapter 376. Seeing Xiao Yu's sullen look, Nieli couldn't help but find it funny. He never thought that things would turn out like this. He always thought that Xiao Yu was a man, but who knew that Xiao Yu hid it so deeply? It probably has a lot to do with the inscription patterns on Xiao Yu's chest. Nieli looked at Xiao Yu and said, "How's your recovery?" Xiao Yu couldn't help but think about what happened earlier. She turned her head away with a burning face. "I'm fine." Xiao Yu's voice was very soft. "That's good." Nieli nodded and said, "Since you've recovered, let's go back." Xiao Yu responded. Nieli stood up. Just when he was about to leave, he suddenly sensed several powerful auras approaching him. "Be careful." Nieli immediately pulled Xiao Yu's hand and hid in the nearby forest. Then he dipped his right hand in some demon blood and quickly wrote inscription patterns. One after another, inscription patterns flowed out. At the same time, his right hand pointed at Xiao Yu's chest. pervert. Xiao Yu's face was ashen. Nia Li just took advantage of her, and now he's doing it again? Nia Li grabbed Xiao Yu's wrist with his left hand and covered Xiao Yu's mouth with his right hand. He said in a low voice, "If you don't want to die, then don't talk." Xiao Yu was hugged from behind by Nia Li. She whimpered and struggled, but was unable to break free. Her eyes were filled with shame and indignation. She could only let Nia Li hug her from behind. That strange feeling made her cheeks burn. Nia Li and Xiao Yu hid together behind a tree, their eyes fixed on the forest outside. They held their breaths because they felt that the auras were extremely strong, not something they could resist at the moment. As for whether or not the inscription patterns on their bodies could avoid being tracked, Nia Li wasn't sure. After spending so much effort to survive, if he were to be killed here again, it would be too much of a waste. When Xiao Yu wriggled just now, Nia Li could feel Xiao Yu's perky and soft buttocks. He couldn't help but recall some of his experiences in the tomb of the god of death in the nether realm. In the past, she thought that Xiao Yu was a man, so she didn't feel anything. But now, Nia Li couldn't help but curse inwardly. To be honest, although Xiao Yu was dressed in men's clothing, she was still breathtakingly beautiful. Nia Li collected his thoughts and stared into the distance with a sharp gaze. But at this moment, two figures landed on a grassland in the distance. These were two experts of other races. One was covered in hair, the other had crimson ears. They were obviously experts of the demon race. Just now, I clearly felt two auras here, but I don't know where they went. The two auras just now should have nothing to do with that kid. That kid's aura isn't so weak. The two demon race experts were talking. These two demon race experts should be tracking someone. That kid killed so many of our people. If I don't kill him, it will be hard to resolve the hatred in my heart. One of the demon race experts said while gnashing his teeth, his eyes searching around. He clearly felt two extremely weak auras, but after rushing over, why couldn't he feel any auras at all? Logically speaking, such two weak auras shouldn't be able to escape their perception at all. These two demon race experts searched around. At this moment, Xiao Yu finally understood. So it turned out that Nia Li had sensed the two demon race experts. That's why he had acted earlier. Although her posture was extremely ambiguous with Nia Li, Xiao Yu didn't dare to move and held her breath. Sensing that one of the demon race experts was heading their way, Nia Li's heart couldn't help racing. According to his judgment, these two demon race experts were at least heavenly axis realm existences. The moment they got within 10 meters of Nia Li and Xiao Yu, they'd easily see through Nia Li and Xiao Yu's concealment. At that time, with Nia Li and Xiao Yu's strength, they wouldn't be a match for these two heavenly axis realm experts. It was simply impossible for him to be a match for two heavenly axis realm experts. He'd be easily killed. Just when that demon race expert was about to approach Nia Li and Xiao Yu, he suddenly stopped and looked into the distance. Over there! That demon race expert's eyes flashed with joy. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two figures quickly flew over. Seeing the two demon race experts far away, Nia Li finally felt relieved. Only then did Nia Li feel relieved. Let go of me. Xiao Yu struggled a little as she spoke in a soft voice. Thinking of today's encounter, she wished that she could find a hole to hide in. Nia Li released Xiao Yu and said, "The situation was urgent. I had no choice but to do what I did earlier." Xiao Yu glanced at Nia Li with a little depression. She naturally understood that Nia Li didn't do it on purpose. However, how could she not be bothered? The two demon race experts have left. We can't stay here any longer. We have to leave quickly, Nia Li said. Just when he was about to leave, he saw a figure standing 2 meters away from them. Nia Li's heart slightly trembled. Nia Li glanced at the other party. It was a small child. Aside from a pair of sharp, furry ears, he looked no different from an ordinary human. He looked like a 13 or 14-year-old child with an extremely handsome appearance. Although the other party looked like a 13 or 14-year-old child, Nelly didn't dare to be careless. The age of the demon race was different from that of humans. Although he looked like a 13 or 14-year-old child, there was a high possibility that he was an old demon that had lived for thousands of years. He blinked his eyes and examined Nieli and Xiaoyu with his clear eyes. Although he didn't know what the other party's intention was, Nia Li's expression was tense and vigilant at all times. Although he couldn't tell how strong the other party was, he was sure that the guy in front of him was stronger than the two demon race experts. He was able to approach them silently and was only a few meters away from them. If the other party wanted to kill them, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. Which divine sect are you from? Hagami Munyan or Skyblaze sect? He looked at Nieli and Xiaoyu and asked with a smile, "Who are you?" Nieli looked at the other party and asked. He didn't understand what the other party's intention was. "My name is Wiazi. I'm already over 80 years old. You guys should call me Grandpa. I asked you a question, but you guys didn't answer first. Instead, you came to ask me?" Wiazi said with an air of seniority. Hearing Wiazi's words, Nieli smiled in his heart. This demon had only lived for 80 years. He was still a child in the demon race. Many demons at this age didn't even have spiritual wisdom. However, this Wiazi should have a higher spiritual wisdom. Judging from Wiazi's tone, it didn't seem like there was any malice. If the other party wanted to kill them, they would have died long ago. You demon clans aren't the same as us humans. An 80-year-old is still a child among the demon clans. Nieli shrugged. Aren't you two children? Wiazi said a little gloomily. Then he put on a straight face. Aren't you worried that I'll kill both of you? You're only at the heavenly fate realm. Taking care of the little guy was very tiring. He couldn't even sleep at night. During the day, he had to run around with the birth certificate and vaccination. Recently, he's been too busy, so he didn't update much. When Snail is done, he'll take a break and then update normally. I'm very sorry. Chapter 377. Nieli faintly smiled as he looked at Wiazi. If I wanted to kill you, I would have done it a long time ago. Indeed, with their strength at the heavenly fate realm, they weren't a match for Wiazi. Wiazi shrugged. Consider yourselves lucky to have run into me. Since we've come to the outside world, we've already prepared ourselves to die. There's no such thing as good or bad luck. Nieli calmly looked at Wiazi. He didn't know the origins of this demon race youth. There are space-time fluctuations coming from your bodies. Wiazi's gaze swept across Nieli and Xiaoyu with a peculiar glint in his eyes. Nieli's heart trembled. He never thought that Wiazi's perception would be so keen. He paid attention to the changes in Wiazi's expression. Xiaoyu stood beside Nieli in silence. She understood that Wiazi's strength far surpassed theirs. The more she spoke, the more likely she'd make a mistake. Thus, it was better for her to remain silent. But don't worry, I have no enmity with you. I won't do anything to you for no reason. Wiazi shrugged. He looked at Nieli and Xiaoyu. You're also here for the Void Illusionary Divine Palace, right? Void Illusionary Divine Palace? Nieli slightly furrowed his brows as he pondered. Seeing Nieli and Xiaoyu's clueless expressions, Wiazi was stunned for a moment. You're not here for the Void Illusionary Divine Palace? If you're not here for the Void Illusionary Divine Palace, then why are you here? Don't you know that this place is dangerous? Nieli recalled what kind of place the Void Illusionary Divine Palace was. The Void Illusionary Divine Palace was a palace left behind by an ancient powerhouse. This palace opened once every 6 years, and because there were many secret treasures in the palace, every time it opened, countless masters would flock to it. In his previous life, Nieli had heard of the Void Illusionary Divine Palace's legends. There were many treasures in the Void Illusionary Divine Palace, but they were also filled with hidden dangers. Roughly 60 years later, the Yaoshin sect entered the void illusionary divine palace and opened the treasury of that ancient powerhouse. Wuyazi pondered for a moment, then said, "My questions were unnecessary. With your heavenly fate realm strength, entering the void illusionary divine palace will only lead to death." Wuyazi waved his hand. "You'd better leave this place as soon as possible. With Nye Li and Xiaoyu strength, it'd be extremely difficult for them to enter the void illusionary divine palace. Even if they encountered other demon clan experts, they'd only end up dead." "Why were those two demon clan experts chasing you just now?" Nye Li pretended to casually ask. "That's right. How could those two idiots be my match? The Yaoshin sect has 6 spiritual halls. They're from the Fire Spirit Hall, and I'm from the Rain Spirit Hall. Earlier, I obtained an unknown object near the void illusionary divine palace. They wanted to steal it from me, but I killed a few of them. Then they started chasing me. I could have easily killed those two, but if I killed them, I'd be exposed. That's why I couldn't be bothered to make a move against them," Wuyazi said with a little arrogance. "An unknown object? What is it?" Nye Li asked after pondering for a moment. Wuyazi clearly didn't place Nye Li in his eyes. He wasn't on guard against Nye Li either. "You two are only in the heavenly fate realm, so there's no harm in showing it to you." This round stone was about the size of a fist, and its entire body was pure and translucent. Although no energy fluctuations could be felt from it, there were rays of red light within it, as if it was boiling. "That's it. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it's something good." Wuyazi looked very happy. He had nothing to do here anyway. Chatting with Nye Li and Xiaoyu for a while wasn't a big deal. He'd leave after hiding for a while. As for Nye Li and Xiaoyu, he'd soon forget about them. Nye Li's gaze fell on the stone in Wuyazi's hand. He laughed involuntarily and said, "Red smoke stone! You know what this is?" Wuyazi's interest was immediately piqued. He looked at Nye Li and asked, "Of course, this red smoke rock is indeed a rare item, extremely rare, but it's not a treasure. At most, it can be used to forge a grade 5 artifact." Nye Li shrugged. "That's impossible. You're kidding me, right?" Wuyazi immediately looked at Nye Li warily. "I don't believe that such a rare item isn't a treasure. A rare item isn't necessarily a treasure. If you don't believe me, go look through the God of Crafts book in the God of Crafts pavilion. It's page 761. Nye Li shrugged and said indifferently, "God of Crafts book? I think I have one here." Wuyazi immediately rummaged through his spatial ring. After a long time, he took out a tattered book. "Although I took a few pages to the toilet last time, it's still usable. I wonder if page 761 is still here." Wuyazi flipped to page 761. There was indeed an introduction to the red smoke stone. It was exactly the same as the item in his hand. Wuyazi suddenly felt as if he had swallowed a fly. "So this is what I got after spending so much time and effort. And I even killed dozens of people for this thing?" Wuyazi said angrily. He was a little depressed when he thought of how he had been chased all the way. Nye Li laughed. "That's why I say, you should read some books before you fight. Get lost. I hate it when people ask me to read. My old man always makes me read those stupid books. I'm so annoyed." Wuyazi waved his hand. He thought for a moment and rolled his eyes. "Anyway, I got this thing. Although it's not anything good, since it's so rare, I'll sell it to my friend's best friends. I think I can make a lot of money. Anyway, they definitely won't recognize what it is." At Wuyazi's words, Nye Li and Xiaoyu exchanged glances, speechless. Becoming Wuyazi's best friends was really bad luck. Wuyazi re-examined Nye Li and said, "I never thought that you'd be so knowledgeable, even though your cultivation is only in the heavenly fate realm." Xiaoyu couldn't help glancing at Nye Li. Indeed, she admired Nye Li's knowledge. Nye Li looked at Wuyazi and smiled. "You'll definitely get nothing if you go to the void illusionary divine palace like this. Don't tell me you know something about the void illusionary divine palace. Wiyazi couldn't help looking at Nyeli. I do know a little. Nyeli pondered. Wiyazi didn't seem reliable. If he entered the void illusionary divine palace and obtained something good, it might not necessarily belong to him or Xiaoyu. Wiyazi's brows twitched. The void illusionary divine palace is surrounded by the 1,000 illusionary soul bewildering array. For thousands of years, countless martial ancestor realm experts have been unable to break it. They can't enter the void illusionary divine palace. However, there were people who accidentally entered and obtained quite a few good things. Wiyazi rolled his eyes and said, "Do you guys want to go in with me?" The 1,000 illusionary soul bewildering array isn't hard to break, but we're only in the heavenly fate realm. We'll just be throwing our lives away. Let's not go. Nyeli shook his head. Chapter 378. At Nyeli's words, Wiyazi felt extremely depressed. If Nyeli had said that he couldn't break the 1,000 illusionary soul bewildering array, then forget it. At worst, he'd just go by himself. However, if Nyeli said that he could break the 1,000 illusionary soul bewildering array, then Nyeli wouldn't go. Nyeli was just like many others. He was just trying his luck. After all, passing through the 1,000 illusionary soul bewildering array was too difficult. Can you really break the 1,000 illusionary soul bewildering array? You're not lying to me, right? Why don't you tell me the method to break the 1,000 illusionary soul bewildering array? If I get anything good from the void illusionary divine palace, then I'll share it with you. How about it? Wiyazi looked at Nyeli. The 1,000 illusionary soul bewildering array has over 1,000 variations. Every variation requires a different method to break it. If I tell you all of them, can you remember them all? Nyeli looked at Wiyazi with a smile that wasn't a smile. Why else would it be called the 1,000 illusionary soul bewildering array? At Nyeli's words, Wiyazi felt a headache coming on. Even if Nyeli told Wiyazi the method to break the array, Wiyazi still wouldn't be able to break it. Xiaoyu couldn't help smiling inwardly when she heard the conversation between Nyeli and Wiyazi. Wiyazi would soon fall for Nyeli's trap. Although she didn't know if Nyeli was telling the truth, she was certain that Nyeli must have a motive for acting this way. Wiyazi pondered for a moment before saying, "How about this? I'll take you to the void illusionary divine palace, and you help me break the 1,000 illusionary soul bewildering array. We'll split the loot 50-50. I'm not going. Nyeli shook his head and looked at Xiaoyu. Let's hurry and leave this place. Wait. Wiyazi shouted. What? Nyeli looked at Wiyazi. Wiyazi clenched his teeth and said, If you guys don't go to the void illusionary divine palace, then you're dead. Since we've come to the macro world, it's inevitable that we'll die. If we die, we die. What's the big deal? Nyeli shrugged and looked at Wiyazi. Are you going to do it? Hearing Nyeli's words, Wiyazi's tone softened as he said, Of course not. There are too many people from the Yaoshin sect nearby. Without my protection, you can't go back at all. Since you're going to die anyway, why not follow me to the void illusionary divine palace? It's not that we don't want to go, but on the way, if someone sees us with the Yaoshin sect, it will be very dangerous. If that happens, we won't be able to wash ourselves clean, even if we jump into the Yellow River. Nyeli snorted. Sectarian bias. As far as I'm concerned, as long as the demon race and the human race don't steal from me, then they're not my enemies. Wiyazi snorted. Anyone who tries to steal from me will be killed. Even if you don't mind, what will the Yaoshin sect think if they see you with two humans? Nyeli added. Wiyazi pondered. Nyeli's words made sense. Do you have any good ideas? Nyeli pondered for a long time, then said, It's not like I don't have any. What is it? Wiyazi's eyes lit up. Nyeli looked at Wiyazi and asked, Have you heard of a secret technique called the demon blood sacrifice? Demon blood sacrifice? That won't do. Wiyazi hurriedly shook his head. This is a taboo for us demons. Then forget it. There's no other way. Niali shrugged. What's the demon blood sacrifice? Xiaoyu asked in surprise. I've only heard of the demon blood sacrifice. It's a ritual in which the demon race offers some demon blood. It can allow humans to possess the appearance and aura of the demon clan. This way, we'll be able to fool our way through and won't be killed by the other demon clans. Nia Li pretended to be confused. Xiao Yu's question was simply too timely. Then, help us complete the demon blood sacrifice. He won't suffer any losses. He just needs to offer some demon blood. Why is he unwilling? Xiao Yu asked curiously. I don't know. Niali shrugged. Wiyazi looked at Niali. How much did Niali know about the demon blood sacrifice? In Niali's mind, the demon blood sacrifice was only used to deceive the other demons? We can't deceive them. We also don't want to be seen with the demon race experts. So forget it. Niali shrugged. Let's hurry and leave. Wiyazi looked at Niali and Xiaoyu. His eyes flickered as he pondered. Before Niali and Xiaoyu came here, they had entrusted their fate spirits. If Niali and Xiaoyu couldn't return alive, the effect of the demon blood sacrifice would automatically disappear. Wiyazi pondered and made his decision. They couldn't blame him for burning the bridge after crossing it. The power of the demon blood sacrifice couldn't be allowed to fall into the hands of two humans. Just as Niali and Xiaoyu were about to leave, Wiyazi called out to Niali and Xiaoyu. Wait. Niali turned to look at Wiyazi and asked, What is it? I've thought about it. I can perform the demon blood sacrifice for you two. However, you can't stray more than 1 kilometer away from me until we leave the void illusionary divine palace. You'll be free once we leave. Wiyazi looked at Niali and Xiaoyu. Niali gave Wiyazi a deep look. All right, I'll give you the demon blood. A sharp weapon appeared in Wiyazi's hand. He cut his wrist and drops of demon blood dripped down. Then Wiyazi stored them in a bottle. A brief moment later, Wiyazi collected a bottle of demon blood and threw it over to Niali. Niali kept the bottle of demon blood in his hand and dipped his finger in it. Right. How do you draw the inscription pattern array for the demon blood sacrifice? Niali raised his head and asked Wiyazi. Niali didn't know how to draw the inscription pattern array for the demon blood sacrifice, which made Wiyazi feel more at ease. It seemed that Niali really didn't know how to use the demon blood sacrifice. This is how you write it. Wiyazi began to teach Niali. As Niali wrote down the inscription patterns, they slowly formed into an inscription pattern array. It rapidly rotated on Niali's body and blossomed with dazzling light. Wiyazi extended his right hand and pointed at the center of the inscription pattern array. Boundless energy poured into the demon blood sacrifice inscription pattern array. Rays of light quickly spread out. With Wiyazi's help, the inscription pattern array quickly disappeared into Niali's body. Niali could feel traces of mysterious energy flowing through his blood. It was Wiyazi's demon blood. It flowed through Niali's veins and lay dormant there. Niali sensed for a moment. He didn't know where Wiyazi came from. Wiyazi's demon blood contained boundless energy. It seemed like Wiyazi's bloodline wasn't simple. All right, your demon blood sacrifice is complete. Wiyazi glanced at Niali and said, Soon. Xiaoyu also completed her demon blood sacrifice. Although Xiaoyu didn't know the exact purpose of the demon blood sacrifice, she had a vague feeling that it wasn't as simple as Niali had said, that it wasn't just a disguise.